Good morning, everyone. My name is Constantine Camaras, and I have the honor of being IAB Europe's Chairman Emeritus, as well as being the chair of the Interact Program Advisory Board. A warm welcome to you all, and especially warm welcome from Athens at the start of a heat wave. It is delightful to see hundreds of people joining us today from across the continent to discuss the future of our industry. Now, as many of you know, we had planned initially Interact 2021 to take place physically in Lisbon, Portugal. And as we weren't able to do that in 2020, but instead we are delighted to bring Interact back online again in 2021 and to be able to bring you a number of presentations and a great deal of engaging content as we welcome you to this virtual Interact Congress. Possibly the last, one hopes the last virtual Interact Congress, however, certainly one that is just like the physical version of the event, full of inspiring presentations, great insights, and very interesting discussions and debates. Now, the theme for this year is the Digital New Deal, as we aim to take stock of what exactly is needed to ensure a sustainable and innovative future for our digital advertising and marketing industry. Now, across 3 afternoons, we will be diving into the 3 pillars of IAB Europe, including privacy and data protection, policy and data protection, that is, standards and frameworks, and of course, today, the latest industry trends and initiatives. Now, as most of you know, IAB Europe is the European level association for the digital marketing and advertising ecosystem, and through its membership of national IABs and companies from the media, technology, and marketing sector active across Europe, our mission is to lead political representation and promote industry collaboration across Europe. One of the ways we do this is, of course, by bringing people together through our events, and none is more special, none is more important than our annual Interact Congress. And at this stage, I'd like to say that we are very grateful to our sponsors for this event, OneTrust, Double Verify, and Relevant Yield, and our supporting sponsors, Google and Magnite. They have helped very much to make Interact Online possible this year. Now, today we have a stellar lineup of speakers, moderators, and panelists for our sessions, and we will shortly hear the very much anticipated, especially this year, results of the Idex benchmark study, which will reflect back on the year that passed, so that to help us understand, to truly understand the impact of the pandemic. This would be followed by a discussion with audience Q&A on digital investment in 2021 and beyond, but also a comment on what the results of 2020 actually mean and what are the key insights we can have from those results. We will then hear from Terence Kawaja, the founder and CEO of Luma Partners, as he explores the digital opportunities in the new era of identity. This would be followed by a panel discussion on the post-third-party cookie era, and then by a panel discussion on digital advertising in 2025, a projection not in the immediate future, but in the near future, and having perspectives from different stakeholders in the industry. We will then close with a keynote from Tina Bochler, the head of global media and agency operations at Nestlé, who will give us the brand perspective on the emerging digital ecosystem and the opportunities this provides for brands and what it means to all stakeholders. I personally think it's going to be a fascinating 2.5 hours, and I do really hope that by the end of those 2.5 hours, you will all agree with me. Now, all participants, speakers, and panelists, that is, are not only distinguished members of our ecosystem, but the vast majority of them are members of IAB Europe. So if you'd like more information on how to get involved, please reach out to Helen Musser, the CMO, or to Lauren Wakefield, who runs our marketing and industry programs, to receive more information. Now, before we kick off, we would like to establish the stakeholder breakdown of the audience, because this is always something that we find very, very interesting. Why? Because IAB Europe is an organization that represents the entirety of the value chain, from brands to agencies, to solutions providers, to platforms, and of course, to publishers and broadcasters. So it will be very interesting to have that breakdown. So if you don't mind completing that, we would be grateful, and I will share the results before we start. I should also mention that you can actively participate in today's events, as each panel will be followed or will include some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for today's panelists, please submit them to the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window. In addition to the poll that I hope you all just completed, we will also be launching a couple of more audience polls to ascertain your opinion on specific topics throughout the event today. And again, we would very much appreciate your participation. So if you have done so, thank you for completing the poll. Let me see. The results should be in. That's very interesting. We have 7% advertisers, 26%, a quarter that come from agency, 21% from Idex, almost 20%, 18% publisher, 4% media and press. And it goes to show how diverse our ecosystem is. Almost our quarter is other. So again, a very clear representation of our different stakeholders in the ecosystem. Now, thanking you for that, I suggest that we move on to, as custom dictates, for those of you that have been around Interact, especially in the physical version, starting with the presentation that many of us have been eagerly anticipating, which is essentially the results of the 2020 Idex benchmark survey, with this time even more 2021 market predictions. And there's no one better or better trained or more informed to do that than our chief economist at IAB Europe, Dr. Daniel Clapp, that I'm sure all of you are well aware of his work and his output. So Daniel, the screen is yours. We are all incredibly eager to hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much, Konstantin, and a very warm welcome from me. It is a special year conducting this Idex benchmark study, which we have been doing since 2006. And there was one other time when I was slightly jittery looking at the numbers, and that was, of course, in 2008 and 2009. And I was very pleased back then that despite all doom and gloom predictions, the market in the financial crisis after the Lehman crash continued to grow. We're in a very different environment, of course, right now, because the market is much more mature. Digital in many markets is in terms of ad spend, the medium or set of media, you really have to say, with the highest share. So there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of budget invested. So one could think that this would mean more risk, more volatility. And we have at IAB Europe, if you followed our work, we've continuously reforecast and reassessed the impact of COVID-19 on the ad market in 2020, but also we've thought about how this industry, how this entire ecosystem might be recalibrated after we come out of the pandemic. Today, I really want to focus on our Idex benchmark study, which we are launching today, and I'll weave my predictions into these numbers because they are, I think, as rich as ever, as we have added lots of details and granularity and revamped the study to really accommodate the changing market environments. we are surveying in total 28 different countries in Europe. So it's round about 95, 96% probably of all ad spend. We've got a few holes to fill, as you can see here, but we cover nearly everything. And this is a very important study because it's not just any market sizing study, but it is done in collaboration with all the IABs. All the countries usually listed here. So what we do is we do a meta-analysis. We take the local deep expertise that all the IABs have with their methods and ways of obtaining the data. We harmonize this and enrich the data, in particular when it comes to social platforms and so forth, to provide an apples-to-apples holistic view across the digital media investment landscape in Europe. So that we in Europe can benchmark, as the name suggests. We can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and also learn from countries that are succeeding. When we're starting out, we started out from a very, very bad place. So I call this the ladder of hope. Last April, I first started to predict how the digital ad market was going to shape up in 2020. The signals weren't good at all, and there was hardly any visibility. It was doing forecasts on quicksand. And although I've been doing this for a decade, this was really an exceptional environment where it's very hard to draw on the established repertoire of econometric forecasts and benchmarking and so forth. And we thought digital was going to fall off a cliff. And if you look at the press and if you look at initial company results coming out, that seemed to be the case. So we are forecasting 12.1% decline in April for 2020. But then the Q2 results came out and things were surprisingly better than we anticipated. So our August forecast, we shaved off quite a lot of this pessimistic view and thought that there might be a faster recovery for digital. We had the issue that digital ad spend was in a sense faster switched off than other media in March and in April because it's a switch on, switch off medium. You can very, very quickly adapt your media plan. And we thought, well, that's going to be highly problematic with the maturity of digital is going to decline. But market signals were different. And as the year progressed, our January forecast actually went to the other side, and we said there's going to be a 4.1% increase. Now, having crunched the data from 28 different countries, we can even say that de facto, so the actuals are a 6.3% year-on-year increase in digital advertising in Europe during this hard year of 2020. And that means we're at a market of 69.4 billion euros, nearly 70 billion. And we have, over the last couple of years, progressed ourselves up in terms of GDP comparisons with countries. We started at a country, the 100th country in the world in terms of GDP. Now we are kind of at number 63, 64, in line above Oman, kind of in line with Sri Lanka, GDP. That's how big the digital ad market is in Europe. So we went from bad to better to actually a surprisingly good performance for digital advertising in 2020. And yes, it is the slowest growth since the first Idex study to contextualize this, but it's still a strong performance given this very, very tough macro conditions. We were growing fast in the financial crisis than now, but that was also because digital advertising had a much lower share of the overall advertising pie than it has now, with 56.5%. So the annual growth rate, the common annual growth rate was higher in the previous years, and we slowed down. But given the circumstances, given double-digit declines in other media, it is a testament to digital advertising and also how digital advertising fits in, has adapted to and must adapt to changing consumption habits, which are going to stick with e-commerce, etc. Digital advertising is poised to take further share and further growth in this environment. And indeed, it wasn't just like this at the aggregate picture, but we can see that out of our 28 markets, 24 actually posted growth, and 7 of them actually even double-digit growth. And yes, you can see this growth is in emerging markets, in CEE markets, which have a lot of kind of organic growth. You can see, for instance, in Ukraine and in Serbia, we had much less strict lockdowns than in some of the Western countries. But you can also see that countries like Germany, who in 2020 still went quite well through the pandemic, actually posted double-digit growth. And only 3 markets declined. Belgium was flat. Spain, we know, was very, very hard hit with several national lockdowns, regional lockdowns, very, very strong case numbers. Belarus had a very particular situation with a quasi-revolution in the country. So these are all factors beyond, in part, beyond the pandemic that explain this performance. Now, if we contextualize digital advertising a little bit with other media, we can see something remarkable. We see a fast forward acceleration. We see high single or even double-digit share gains of digital advertising during the pandemic. You can see digital advertising expanded its pie of the overall media from 2019 to 2020. And if we look on the right side, we can see by how many percentage points this has happened. Typically, on an annual basis, you've seen digital advertising take 1, 2, or 3 percentage points of other media, and it has grown cumulatively in that way. So this was really a rupture where with changing consumption habits, with lockdowns, with the rise of e-commerce, etc., we saw a accelerated, rapid shift towards digital budgets. And this is reflected across countries in our benchmark study. Now, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that there isn't just one market. There are 28 different markets, which are typically for Europe all quite different in structure, in trading culture, in which formats prevail and so forth, but also in terms of size. We can clearly see how the market is dominated by the UK, Germany, France. Russia in the last couple of years has recorded an amazing growth from the 10th position overall in terms of size now to the 4th position. But it's important to zoom into the long tail of the other markets as well, smaller countries, but with often, in case of Denmark, Norway, extremely mature ad markets with a very, very strong playbook in terms of video, digital first markets, and other markets that are smaller, particularly in CE, which are growing rapidly. Now, if you follow the news in the digital ad industry, you've heard the term cohorts, and I couldn't help but try to group our Idex countries into their own little cohorts. This bubble chart here very neatly shows the different performance of the ad markets. The size of the bubble is the size of the market. On the x-axis, you have a sign of market maturity, which is digital ad spend per capita. And then you've got digital ad growth on the y-axis. You can clearly see how these markets differ. Let's go through it. We have the UK, kind of very separated from the rest, very mature, a huge digital ad market. I'm going to call it a giant in macro terminal. It has moved away from the other markets to be its own thing, really, in terms of performance and size over the last couple of years. But this year, with the lockdowns, with the pandemic, it has grown below the European average. We have a second group, which are the kind of wealthy and decelerating countries, where you got the Nordics together in Sweden, who have been tightly clustered for about half a decade. They've always moved together in conjunction when it comes to growth and maturity. And we again see them decelerating as they mature, even despite the fact that, for instance, in Sweden, the economy was fairly open during the pandemic. Another group, which is remarkable, are what I call the maturing risers. We had markets like Germany, for instance, a very, very big television market and big media market overall. In the last couple of years, growing in line with or below the European average. This is different now. It's the first time, in a sense, that Germany is growing faster than the average, and got a tight cluster of other markets around them, all kind of apart from the Czech Republic, Western European markets, which are growing above average. You got, though, kind of what I would call the slow West markets that are kind of stuck or were stuck in a low growth phase. You have the relatively mature Netherlands and Finland, but then also France heavily hit by the pandemic, Italy, of course, and Belgium as well, who are underperforming. Another group, I already mentioned them, that experienced stronger, often more diverse headwinds, which were decelerating in 2020. Another group with kind of mixed challenges, mainly CE markets, and then kind of a fast and the furious group, hyper growth markets, in particular Turkey and the Ukraine. So although we talk about Europe, there are very different markets with different market maturity, with different growth trajectories, and also local issues and opportunities. Let's move from the markets to the formats, because digital advertising isn't one thing, it's an umbrella term for many, many different formats. We changed how we looked at the digital ad market, in particular, given the rise of social. We used to put social and display in one bucket, but increasingly that was obscuring the real underlying trends. So we try to separate this out in much more detail to isolate where growth is coming from and where investment and improvement opportunities lie. So we can see this umbrella here right in action. We can see on the left classifieds, directories, and affiliate, which we put in there as well, minus 9.1%. The only digital ad format that kind of nearly declined double digit. It's logical. The job market was stagnant. Large purchases like automotive weren't happening as well. So we saw that market heat up again in Q4, but it was lagging longer than others in the recovery. Search really was the poster child of the 08-09 recession due to its performance nature. And it, despite its market maturity, continued to grow, heavily impacted by travel, which didn't happen anymore. So that's why the growth is slightly slower than in display. In display, plus 9.1%. Sounds great, but if we look in more detail at display, there are two markets really. There's the social market, which grew extremely strongly, fueled by all these macro trends I outlined, and other display, which barely grew 3%. So the market structure looks as follows. We got search as the biggest aggregate format, display in total larger, but we split it in social and other display smaller, and then we got classifieds and directories. And this was a journey that's was long in the making. So if we take a macro view, we can see how overall classifieds and directories were losing share, and display was coming in. But if we zoom in, we can actually see why we made this new split between display and social. If we zoom in from 2017 onwards, we can see the rising power of social, and actually the non-social, so the other display, stopped gaining share in 2019, being slightly displaced by social. Now, within this segment, excluding social, there's some interesting trends as well. So there's an overall sectoral shift towards video, away from banners and static formats. This video is broadcaster video, pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll video, but it's also outstream video. It is fueled in part, but it's still very nascent in Europe. We shouldn't forget that CTV market, but predominantly it is on laptops, tablets, mobile, and so forth. And for the first time, we're including in our study the audio market. Audio has been talked a lot about quite a bit, but it's a very, very small market and was slightly forgotten during the pandemic in terms of the weight it has. But for the first time, we got data on audio from 11 markets, and we were able to extrapolate how big the market really is in Europe. And it is 500 million euros in 2020, fueled by around about 7-8% podcasts, bit of radio, but the predominant bit is online music streaming services. And that grew, again, a healthy 16.7%. And we expect this growth to continue, and expect the audio market to gain pace to reach around 1.5 billion by 2024. For the first time, we're also looking more deeply at programmatic. And if you ask someone about a definition for programmatic, and there are probably as many answers as there are markets in Europe. And when we look at our markets that we survey, nearly each has kind of a different definition. There are two buckets. There is one, which I would call the automation bucket, which is programmatic, so the open internet plus walled gardens. So in a sense, social and open RTB together. That is increasingly obscuring the real dynamics, particularly if we're looking after what is the growth on the open internet? What is the growth now in the context of the demise of third-party cookies? What is the growth when we look at the important role that media pluralism plays and sustainable publishers? So this is why we're only looking at programmatic right now, excluding the social bit. And we can see that although the overall display market, including social, was fairly stagnant, the programmatic bit was growing strongly. with plus 7.6%. And we can see more and more a displacement of the non-programmatic, of the IO-based stuff, as programmatic continues to gain share, now at 50.7% of all display. And here we can see how social conversely looks like. We saw social grow more strongly at around 16%. But again, different dynamics within social. We can see a massive shift this year towards video. So it's not just Facebook anymore, but we're seeing massive growth from Snap, from TikTok, but also from Instagram. And in the next couple of years, we see this going to continue, in particular as social becomes shoppable. The integration of brand and performance advertising in one view is going to be one of the main growth drivers of social going forward. Very different market trajectories, but we can see double-digit growth in social in most of the markets we've looked at. And when the full study is being released, you can also see how the social size and the share looks like across all the markets. In total, if we zoom out to kind of overall display, we can see 13 markets have double-digit growth. So still healthy growth here again, and more markets than just the CE markets. For instance, if we look at Germany, Ireland, the UK in display, also very strong, although it overall underperformed, mainly being dragged down by classifieds. So a broad range of markets recording double-digit growth. And video, and this is a crucial driver. So this chart here shows how much the display growth is in non-video, what we call traditional, and in video. And you can see how different the trajectory is. These markets here are now ranked on video growth, but you can see how growth is well, half or less than half or even declining if we factor out video. So video with over 16% growth, we can see on average has a 3.4 multiplier to overall total display growth, fueled by, yes, social video, but also open internet, in-stream, broadcast services, AVOD services, etc. And now video exceeds more than half of all display spend in 3 markets already, which means they are video first markets. And others on average, last year it was around 33%, so a rapid rise in video, again, to nearly 40% of all display ad spend being video. If we zoom into search, we can see quite a different trajectory where there are less markets growing strongly. Predominantly, it is the Eastern European markets, and there's a combination of market maturity in many, in particular in the Nordic markets, but also in the UK, the severity of lockdowns affected search due to lack of travel, and overall, the economic impact of COVID-19 beyond the lockdowns has muted search performance, and budgets have more shifted to social instead. If we look at classifieds and directories, we can see a very different picture where most markets were actually in decline. And that is, of course, because of a weak labor market and, of course, of the high household savings as people weren't spending on big ticket items. Yet there's strong consolidation in the classifieds market. In particular, when you look at what some large European groups are doing, what a Schibsted is doing, what an Axel Springer is doing, and this will create synergies in the future. And we predict a very, very fast rebound when the economy opens in 2021, and lots of economies of scale for the classifieds and directories market. We've put some affiliate in there, but that's only around 15% of the total. Now, from formats to devices, it's no doubt that with the rise of social, we have passed a tipping point. And that was already in 2018 for display, and we saw it a bit later for search as well, where the market is mobile first. This is very important to remember now that we're talking about the future of browsers, that we're talking about Apple, IDFA, and so forth, where the real struggle of the future is. We can see outside of mobile a decline both on the display and both on the search side for desktop, and double-digit growth for mobile. And we expect this to continue, although we see it petering out slightly in search as the screen real estate isn't as large, and the kind of map-based features for search discovery are still underdeveloped. A little quantified outlook on the market. There are many moving parts. We saw 2021 start slower than the exuberance of Q4, where we saw up to 30% growth in markets. that were previously severely affected by the pandemic. But Q2 is, of course, very easy in terms of year-on-year growth due to the massive dip that we had in 2020. So there's going to be a mechanical rebound. But we're already seeing some good signals for Q3 and continued growth in Q4. It's also clear now, after lots of speculation, that the consumption changes we've been seeing, they are not temporary, but they're often structural. And this means it's a fantastic opportunity for digital to continue to grow and to continue to capture eyeballs, drive people to store, and so forth. So we're expecting a 9.8% growth year on year for the overall market in Europe to around 76 billion euros. The important thing to remember, though, and with that I'm going to pass back to Konstantin, is that the COVID pandemic and the changes we've seen there, that's really only the first inning. It's only part one of the transformation that digital advertising is undergoing. It was a period of forced innovation, of bringing marketing, business transformation, and paid media together to deliver business outcomes, yes. But the industry is now driving its own structural transformation. And it's such a large industry with 69 billion euros in spend, it also has the responsibility to do that, of a transparent supply chain, of ethical advertising, an ecosystem that works for all, for consumers, for publishers, for buyers and sellers. And that's why we call it the Digital New Deal at Interact. And with that, I'm going to give back to Konstantin. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you ever so much, Daniel, for, as always, a fascinating look into elements that contributed in 2020's digital advertising market value, and for sharing a very positive economic outlook for 2021 and beyond. And underlying, in the end, not only issues that we should be discussing and debating, but also the diverse nature of the work we do at IAB Europe, in the sense of the diverse nature of geography, of formats, of channels, and so on. I have to say, in the end, it's not surprising that in the last 15 months where digital transformation has accelerated, that digital advertising reflected that. And for those of us that are as old as I am and have been around for several decades since the very start, it is almost touching to see digital being the indispensable medium, especially if one remembers the 46860 banner as the, if you like, the most creative thing you could work with, or CPMs in local currencies, not euros, or even a total ad market that was barely in the single billions, let alone 70. So it's incredibly interesting, and I think that the panel discussion we'll have right now is going to be very intriguing. But before we move into our panel discussion, we'd love to get the thoughts of our audience, of our participants, on the results shared in our Idex survey, with a quick poll that should be now on your screen. The question is, has the industry performed better than you expected in 2020? And whilst we wait with the results, let me just underline that the Ad Benchmark study will be available for download from our IAB Europe website shortly. So be sure to head over to our website shortly and get your copy. And now let's see if you all have, there we are, 27% think the 2020 results are much better, 53% slightly better. So 4 out of 5, 80% think that the results were either slightly or much better than their expectations. So an amazing way to bring optimism to the conference as we introduce our first panel. And I would like to welcome I think in alphabetical order, Daniel Bischoff, the CMO of RTL Group, Daniel Clayman, the General Manager of Northern Europe of Xandr, and Anna Sakwitz, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer of Publicis Group in Poland. And Daniel, of course, you will be joining us as a panelist as well. So a big yet late good morning to you all. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Well.
Morning.
Thank you for giving us your time today. It is truly a privilege to have you all with us. I think that the first question that would come to mind is your take on those numbers in the growth that we've seen. A first comment on whether it was as you expected, things that stood out and you think you should underline, and what this means in your views for 2021. Daniel, as we have three Daniels, we're suffering from Danielitis in this panel. I will use the first letter of the surname so that I don't start with Danny, Dan, and Daniel. So Daniel K, as you were the presenter, in your own personal view, before we move to our guest panelists, what was the element that stood out and that surprised even you, such a seasoned and experienced analyst, and what would that mean for 2021?
What really stood out is, to me, was the collapse of correlation between the economic performance of the overall economy and digital advertising. Typically, you would think that advertising amplifies macroeconomic trends. And we've seen it time and again in other recessions, but it wasn't the case now. Or funny enough, it was the case in traditional media, where we saw that play out like a script, but we didn't see it in digital. And what I found remarkable is that you saw, number one, marketers adapt very, very quickly to the new realities. After having cut spend for a short period of time, they came back immediately. We saw completely new companies come back in, companies that are just being founded. We saw a lot of direct spend coming in. So this vibrancy of the rebound, defying the economic odds, is something that I hadn't expected at this speed.
Okay, Anna, a first comment from you.
First comment from myself is that I'm not that much surprised because what I observed during last 2 decades is that in times of crisis, advertisers tend to focus on measurable and also flexible forms of advertisement. And of course, internet is a great example of that. So it should come to as no surprise that the internet has maintained a strong position, especially in the period when we have so many question marks about what is going to happen, and the flexibility especially of what you can do, what you can stop doing immediately comparing to all other media is something that for sure helped, and also the measurements. So there are new benchmarks, new elements of the whole ecosystem, many elements of what we already knew for many years. It's not something that we can really rely on. And internet gives us a lot of new, fresh, updated information. So in this case, I think that it's kind of element that we should expect, also not for short period of time, but also in terms of long perspective, that internet will give us this element of stabilization, security, flexibility that nowadays is really important for the business. Every single stakeholder, yeah, we can imagine if in this ecosystem we work every day. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Anna. Daniel B.
That's going to be fun with all the Daniels. So first of all, thank you, Daniel K. Very interesting as always, and very in-depth view at the industry. I think that the points that are not surprising but most important to us is obviously the growth of video and the dominance of video as a format and driving the categories, both social as well as other display. And that resonates with what we experienced last year and still are experiencing. We saw a real renaissance of the living room, video being the the dominant way of consuming information, and also in different kinds of habits due to the pandemic. I also would say that and argue that the growth in Germany was definitely something very interesting to see as one of the big markets, only big markets having double-digit growth. I think there's a trend that we definitely also see. In addition to that, I would argue that what we observed last year in terms of the advertising spends was that certain sectors were hit very heavily. Definitely, travel industry was one of our biggest sectors at AdConnect before the pandemic. That dropped a lot, but other sectors picked up, and other sectors doubled down on the consumption, the increase of consumption last year. And if you were a contender brand, or if you're still a contender brand, you can really gain advantage through this increased consumption, because the media consumption increased in terms of video on all kinds of formats and all kinds of screens last year. That was definitely something.
That was a very interesting remark. Daniel C.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try not to sort of elaborate on some of the points that have already come across, but I think I didn't see any of the breakdown by quarter, but from our perspective, we saw a pretty amazing recovery and one we didn't expect going into Q3 and very much so in Q4, where advertisers gained confidence again in the market. I think some of the tough conversations they would have had with their finance teams and their CFOs to say, hey, is marketing a cost or an investment, will have happened by that point. And some of the biggest brands in the world paused their activity. Others doubled down. I think you saw that in digital first companies, and those that have really taken digital seriously for a number of years would have benefited long term. I think the other thing that stands out is across the industry, there were so many individuals on furlough, and companies really had to struggle to reinvest in both internal and external programs. So just actually seeing these numbers, bearing in mind, the amount of boots on the ground, as it were, and in offices and being able to collaborate, I think all of those things show what strength there is in this industry, and it's here for the long term.
That's very interesting. What I'd like to do as a second question is zero in a bit more on programmatic, not only because all our members are in one way or the other, to a larger or greater or smaller extent engaged in this, but also because it's such a large part of our ecosystem in terms of share of value. And of course, as we're getting also questions in the Q&A box, changes that are taking place now in terms of the post-third-party cookie and the opt-in consent and first-party tracking and so on, means that it is bound to undergo noticeable change, or it may undergo noticeable change. So if we zero in terms of your assessment for near-term trends and developments looking into the current year and beyond, I would like a comment from you all on, if you like, quote unquote, the near future of programmatic. Daniel K.
I mean, as I try to say in the presentation, I think 2021 is the year of recovery, but it's still, despite all the changes we've seen in consumption, it's still recovering into the old world, right? The foundations haven't been removed yet from the industry, but this is going to happen, where we've been trained or conditioned to think in terms of individual addressability, to think in certain measurement paradigms, which are all going to need to be replaced with additional different solutions. And I think that is a huge challenge for the industry, but it is also an opportunity, a huge opportunity. When we look, for instance, at some of the startups in the programmatic space that are coming now, they are not necessarily coming from the US, but in particular in the programmatic space, you would call it the late gift of GDPR, right? Where contextual targeting providers, privacy first solutions, data clean room providers, they are born in Europe, and they're contributing to building new strong foundations for the programmatic ecosystem. One thing about programmatic we need to bear in mind is, of course, the tension between the programmatic, the open web, and the walled gardens. And we all know that there's a risk of the gravitational pull towards the easy self-serve platforms and so forth. So it's very important that the industry finds new addressability solutions. But I think for me, the analytically most interesting thing is there isn't going to be one. There's going to be a spectrum of identifiability. And we need to be able not to orchestrate between devices and channels and different audience or consumption situations, but also between different targeting paradigms. And that's a huge, I think, exciting opportunity in the next years.
Absolutely, I would concur. Anna, a comment from you.
As far as programmatic is concerned, I think it's worth mentioning two aspects that are maybe not the most common ones. One, of course, is mobile. As we know, everyone was changing their behaviors during pandemic times, and individuals continue to devote their time and attention to consuming content, browsing internet on mobile devices. And mobile also plays a very important role in programmatic display advertising. This is something that will also help advertisers invest more. And what we see, the vast majority of mobile display, both in dollars, US dollars, euros, or PNLs, are programmatic right now. And this is also driving the growth. And another element that Daniel mentioned in his presentation is about audio. The next big thing, of course, not in the terms of the numbers, but in terms of the trends, from my perspective, is programmatic audio. Pandemic also drove listening patterns and made people adjust their listening habits to this new normal. And as far as Poland, for instance, is concerned, there's a rising popularity of podcasts, and this also impacts growing spend in this channel. And again, this is something that will be easily adaptable by programmatic as a model. And of course, we predict that the investment in this kind of activities will double or triple within a few years. The numbers are still small, of course, but this is really important as this element of driving growth, an aspect that we should really look at. And I'm really glad that we've seen these numbers for the first time this year.
Yes, and we at IAB Europe, through the work of Daniel principally, we have identified audio as a new growth area. So duly noted. Daniel B.
Sure. So I think, whenever talking about programmatic, it's worth looking a little bit closer and what that means, and in which respect we see programmatic as being a valuable part of that ecosystem. Is we see an increased demand in terms of programmatic direct and programmatic guaranteed. We see that advertisers are drawn to direct connections to publishers, and especially from the high quality video sector. And that's where we want to also invest. And that's where we want to create an infrastructure that helps advertisers to connect to consumers via high premium, high quality video in a safe and transparent way. I think there has been a lot of learning about programmatic intransparencies and issues on the advertiser side. So we see, we can totally echo the increase of programmatic demand, but in a certain way, I would call it. And that, I think, will be something that we'll see across Europe a lot in the next coming months and years. And if you have followed the press, in France, we're trying to create a national champion, a national video champion, both in TV and digital. And we're going to see an increased effort in building that infrastructure in a transparent way for advertisers to access this video across broadcasters, right? But programmatic, again, is a little bit of a double-edged sword. And to my mind, what I can observe for us, it's definitely the demand on programmatic guaranteed and direct business via programmatic that is increasing.
All right. Daniel C.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of focus on identity. I think most advertisers have probably come to the table now and could say that they feel that they are organized in terms of how they store and locate their first party data, but actually leveraging that in this complicated ecosystem has always been a challenge. If you look at all of the things this group has mentioned already with changes to privacy and walled gardens and how we can activate audiences, I think the challenge now is finding those audiences across multiple devices, multiple channels, and then tying that back in some level of attribution. So identity is going to be huge for the next year or two as companies really start to invest. And I would say anybody who isn't needs to really start doubling down. I think the other one is around curated marketplaces. So we've seen a lot of advertisers start to want to control their supply chains effectively and do so with stakeholders and companies that they trust. And I think you'll see more of that over the next couple of years, where those supply chains will be dictated by a lot of fragmentation that exists in the market. There'll be a handful of players that will be able to support those big advertisers who are looking to do so. And I think you'll see a lot of benefits around identity in the markets that those supply chains can be one and the same. So, markets where publishers are very well connected, marketplaces will be a lot easier to navigate on an identity basis than those where it's more fragmented.
Thank you, Daniel. We are almost over time. However, I would want a last short comment on you on a very important topic. So I'm asking a bit too much, but we've seen connected TV, CTV boom across the pond in the United States, grow very fast. Do you think this is likely to be replicated very shortly in Europe? And what would be the barriers of growth? What is your take on this? A brief comment so that then we can move to our next keynote. Daniel K, that is.
Yeah. I don't think it will happen short term. The markets are so different. The US with its TV structure with the MVPD middlemen has a lot of excess supply. We don't have that in Europe. We are very supply constrained market. Supply of premium inventory is tightly controlled on very few players. We don't have a single European market. There are very, very different measurement paradigms. Different HbbTV standards in different markets. It's going to take a while for this market to gain hold, and for everybody in particular, again, to agree who measures it. Should broadcasters give up control towards agencies to measure a single source of truth, or would they retain control, and so forth? So it will take a while. We will get there, but CTV isn't self-evident. It is about monetizing audiovisual content for publishers, and it's for audiences to be exposed to these experiences, whether it's on a CTV or elsewhere, doesn't really matter. I think there's enough legs in the kind of broader video sphere already.
Thank you, Daniel. Anna.
I don't see, as Daniel, this trend coming quite quickly into Europe. For sure, video generally will gain importance, and what we also observe during this pandemic times is that as far as Poland is concerned, but I think also other countries, that senior target groups have digitalized, and this is, at least in Poland, the biggest TV consumption target group. And since they are moving to the internet, the advertisers will also follow them. So this is something that I rather believe will change the video environment and impact. It will have impact on spending than moving the trend just directly from US, because as Daniel mentioned, there are so many differences that it will be hard to adapt, and this trend of moving senior so-called silver generation into internet cost, either by lockdowns or by fear in getting direct relations with doctors, friends, all other activities they had during the pandemic, so long that change turned into a new habit. And this will for sure be with us and will have a significant impact on investment in internet.
Thank you, Anna. Daniel B.
Thanks. So I'm a bit more bullish on the CTV case, I think, as my predecessors here, as my fellow panelists. I think on the consumption side, what we saw in the last 12 months is that the penetration of devices is already pretty high across Europe, with countries like Germany and the Nordics over 70% of connected television sets. And what happened in the last 12 months is that people finally got an understanding of how to use it, because just connecting your device to the internet doesn't mean that you have an understanding of what you can actually harvest on that device, what kind of video consumption. And we believe that there has been a fundamental increase of knowledge on the consumer side, which will lead ultimately to an increase in consumption, which then at one point obviously will lead to an increase in spends. But we do believe that the living room has really had a renaissance in the last 12 months, and that this big screen joint viewing experience is something that especially younger target audiences got in touch with, and that is here to stay. When will the spends follow that? And when will let's say, the supply be, as Daniel said, at a level that can enable the spends to be pretty big? We'll see. But what we definitely see is already that big AVOD players are expanding their footprint in Europe. So we see that there's a growing push for more supply. And on the consumer side, we see that consumers are finally adopting the usage of the CTV in a new way. So we believe that there's definitely a case to become soon.
It will be interesting to monitor this, and next year, hopefully in Lisbon, to see who was proved more right than wrong. Daniel C., a final comment.
Yeah, I think I'm also pretty bullish. I think CTV locally across Europe, whilst there's always nuances in particular markets, its growth trajectory is huge. The US, I think, if you compare just digital, I think if you compared it to Europe, all the innovation has come from Europe over the last few years. In TV, it's the opposite. The market is 2 or 3 years ahead of where we are in terms of its maturity. So there's some things that we can learn about how we can adopt that locally. If you've watched TV in the US, I think you'll see that it's a pretty different experience in terms of the number of ads that you're getting exposed to every couple of minutes. There's hundreds of channels and options for consumers, and I think that's just not going to be the case locally. So it tends to be dictated by the broadcasters that are in the market, and their ability to lean in and what their long-term plans are. But I think you'll see strong growth, and probably the strongest growth of any channel, in all honesty, in CTV for the next 2 to 3 years.
Very interesting. You're evenly split in terms of your outlook, so we may invite you next year, and we'll have 2 "I told you so" hats. We'll see which of the 2 will be wearing them. I'll thank you all for your time. Very valuable insights and lots of food for thought for all of us. Thank you for joining us. And a reminder to all that the IAB Europe Idex benchmark study will be very shortly available at the IAB Europe website. Make sure you visit the website and download your copy. And now, moving on to our first major keynote of the day, I am delighted to introduce Terence Kawaja, the founder and CEO of Luma Partners, who will explore what the digital opportunity looks like in the new era of identity. Now, all of you, I'm sure that when you heard Luma Partners, you remembered that slide from 10 years ago that enlightened our thinking and understanding of the value chain for quite a while. And I'm sure that Terence will do the same for the new era of identity. Good morning, I would say, Terry, because it must be rather early over there.
Good morning, Konstantin.
I was thinking before I introduced you that if you had $1 for every time over the last 10 years or so where that slide was shown in a conference or in a meeting, you'll be calling Warren Buffett that poor man.
Yes, indeed. And I have many times thought about whether I should have a CPM on that slide, but as it so happens, I have a CPA, and that's working out just fine. So no complaints.
Super. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It is indeed a privilege, and the screen is yours.
Great. Well, I appreciate the fact that I was up early this morning and able to join for the immediate session, which you had that incredible band on, Anna and the Three Daniels, I call them, and because you covered off on many of the touch points that I'm going to be referencing as well. So I think hopefully there will be, will stay a different perspective, some overlap and similarity with what I'm about to talk about. And I've entitled this presentation the Exploring Digital Opportunity in a New Era of Identity, because I do think we're at this sort of fundamentally unique point in our industry's history, which does represent perhaps some chaos, but potentially also an inflection point. And just a note, just yesterday, it was announced, for some context, that there was a bit of a changing of the guard of the richest person in the world. Historically, the last few years, it's been Jeff Bezos. And yesterday's Forbes announced that Bernard Arnault is now the richest person in the world. This may be interesting, of course, to this audience for perhaps a couple of reasons, not the least of which is the provenance, is that Bernard heralds from Europe, not the US, which is nice for a change. But I would suggest an even greater one, which is the source of the wealth. It's not from some technology product, but rather from marketing. And yes, I'm fully aware that LVMH produces goods, but you can't convince me that a bag that retails for $36,000 is a better product for holding, phones, keys, and sunglasses than any other bag. This is, ladies and gentlemen, a pure product of marketing and a fantastic outcome of marketing well done. So turns out European marketing is what is leading the world to its richest people. Okay, so with that as the outset, let's dive into it. You all are very familiar with this chart. This is global digital ad spend over the last decade. And what's fascinating about it is the sheer scale. We're closing in on a $500 billion worth of spend, and that's just an above the line advertising. And really, this period reflects the advent of programmatic and audience-based media buying that allows the advertiser to target individual consumers. It's pretty rare that you have a sector with spend of this scale and that can demonstrate a 10-year track record of a compound annual growth rate of 20%. This is indeed rare. And we would argue that it's inflecting up in what is a perfect storm for the industry. We have trends that impact from the macro sense, industry and markets. Obviously, coming out of COVID, we have unprecedented government stimulus, a recovery, thankfully, on the way. More work to be done, but clearly, at least here in the US, we can see light at the end of the tunnel. And I think many countries in Europe are showing the same progress. We've got, the demographic trend is certainly in our favor, and there's lots of cheap capital. Add to that the industry's, record growth rate. The digital ad spend is going to grow 18% in Europe this year, 26% in the United States. We've never seen, numbers like that in quite some period of time. We've got growing, the march towards addressability and towards accountability, that is to say performance, we think is clearly driving the industry. And something we call the pandemic inflection, which I'll reiterate in a second. But add to that the markets that are experiencing all-time high valuations in the stock market, all kinds of activity in terms of new public companies, and rampant M&A deal activity, thankfully, for our bottom line. And what I mean by this pandemic inflection is there is something we call the pandemic trifecta. Each three industries, gaming, streaming, both audio and video, and e-commerce. These are three sectors that were growing nicely heading into the pandemic. And then what happened during COVID and the lockdown is they actually inflected up with a material consequence and ripple effect for the advertising industry. And all of these are sort of foundational based on identity, right? Because a lot of this growth has been based on audience-based media buying. As changes occur in the identity ecosystem, it's going to cause some ripple effects on some of these growth parameters. Why? Because identity is at the core to data-driven marketing, right? The right message at the right time to the right person is what they say, and the way that manifests itself is really think about the ad marketing cycle is really no longer a stack where you run a campaign, see how it went, and then readjust for the next campaign. Rather, it's a constant sort of real-time cycle, if you will, where planning takes place, data is ingested, and you go through the cycles of activation, measurement, attribution, all of which is tied back into the real-time planning. So, marketers are able to course correct on the fly, and the whole thing is centered on identity. And yet, as we've seen in the last year, over the last few years, I should say, both privacy regulations, notably starting in Europe, and then perhaps even greater impact, the data restrictions from technology companies, primarily Google and Apple, have essentially created these challenges to one-to-one marketing on the open web, as well as to measurement and identity itself. Of course, and it's not an overstatement to suggest that the media and marketing industrial complex is undergoing a fundamental re-architecture of the currency of identity. So with every problem comes an opportunity, and the opportunities we believe in this environment are in a number of areas. One is we will likely see the reemergence of contextual, which was the primary basis of targeting or grouping, prior to 10 years ago. We will see, I think, the re-importance of creative. I think this has been tremendously overlooked. And now that we've got technologies that can help with creative at scale using AI and machine learning, I think you're going to see a lot more emphasis going forward on the actual creative. And then within identity itself, obviously not all identity is lost. Logged on identity, first party identity graphs, data in clean rooms, and household targeting are still possible under this restricted environment. In fact, sources of first party identity come from three primary sort of ecosystems: your sort of owned identity, the sort of logged in PII data that customers will grant publishers and platforms. There's of course convergent TV that you discussed in your last segment, and of course programmatic. And there is a panoply, a sort of a whole variety of fragmented identity solutions for the open web that have arisen in the midst of this deprecation by Google and Apple. And we would suggest that there is no way around the fact that in the short term, this is going to lead to a lot of chaos as everyone tries to figure out which way is up and whose solution will work best. And we note that there is this sort of waterfall, if you will, that the utilization of identity will follow a waterfall of granularity. Of course, individual authenticated first party, data is the most granular. You can then move to households, move to groupings like Google's flock cohorts, and then eventually contextual, with, of course, tools along the way in the open internet, application of device graphs, sort of second-hand use of first-party data known as second-party data, and of course, data bunkers. And we foresee a world which will kind of look like a pyramid, right? Where you've got the sort of the walled garden data that we're all familiar with, those companies at the top. And sadly, they comprise, about 60% of all ad spend. Then we're going to sort of see a layer that we're calling hedged gardens. They're not quite walled gardens in the sense that they don't have some of the moats that the large technology firms have, but these are companies and platforms with large first-party data sources. You will see CTV companies in here. You will see many of the retail media brands in here, and then you've got the open internet. And the open internet is going to be a little bit of the Wild West for the next few years while we try and isolate or unify on a standard identity for application. And maybe it'll be Universal ID 2.0, maybe it'll be partially Flux, maybe it'll be contextual, but I do think we're in for some turbulence in that open internet in the short term. So, and by the way, as it relates to UID 2.0, I can't help but, you got to ask yourself the question, is email hashed identity really the way forward? I mean, think about it, right? Which is more invasive? Which feels more invasive? The fact that, you have a particular user profile about me that looks like 192.158.1.38 or tikawaja@lumapartners.com. I'm going to go ahead and suggest in this privacy sort of sensitive time that we're in, that the latter feels far more privacy invasive to me. So yeah, I know we're getting rid of the cookie, but hashed email, I don't know. Doesn't sort of feel like it fits to me, but we'll see. We'll see. So where are the opportunities? Well, I think your prior panel, Anna and the three Daniels, as I call them, actually had a very good discussion about where these opportunities lie. One was CTV. And obviously the reason this is important is because it represents this huge opportunity, right? It's a massive channel of spend currently. So we're not trying to convert anyone's religion. It doesn't require missionary sales to suggest that one ought to spend in this channel. It already exists. The opportunity is to apply the digital attributes of targeting, personalization, attribution, and performance to the big screen where we get sight, sound, and motion, audience and spend scale, premium inventory, and importantly, brand safety. And as was pointed out in the panel, the US is probably a little ahead here, but I think opportunities exist in Europe as well. And just think about what the effect is. It will enhance and effectively democratize TV ad spend. CBS has 200 and only 200 advertisers. Compare that to Facebook. Sorry, I have 9 million in here. I missed the latest update. It's 10 million. 10 million advertisers on Facebook. And that obviously represents one end of the spectrum, but I think one of the very, very positive aspects of convergence is that we're going to effectively democratize an advertising channel that heretofore was unaffordable for many advertisers. And I think it's really important to talk about nomenclature. CTV, the acronym CTV, the C most frequently stands for connected, which is code for over the top or streaming. We don't use connected for C in our CTV nomenclature. And at Luma, the CTV we talk about, the C stands for convergent. And it's convergent because there's really no other way to look at the TV market than holistically across linear, addressable, OTT, and digital video. How do I know this? I know this because the principals think of their consumption and utilization of this channel in a holistic manner. What do I mean by that? Consumers don't care on what device they're watching their quote unquote TV on, nor do they care through which sub-channel the ads were delivered across these 4 sub-channels. They're just consuming TV. On the other side of the equation, the other principle, the marketer, well, what they need is unified, standardized measurement to plan, buy, analyze, and attribute advertising across all of these sub-channels of convergent TV. In other words, if you manage a campaign within addressable or within OTT or within digital video, but pay no attention to consumption across the other channels, well, you can't even do things like frequency capping. So they need a holistic way to manage across all of these sub-channels. And yes, while, and these are US numbers, my apologies, while all the hoopla is about the switch, right, from viewing patterns and associated ad dollars from linear to OTT, that's what all the excitement is about. The reality is there is going to be consistent spend across all of these channels. I mean, rarely do you have a sector or a channel that is this large, growing, and at this point about 50% addressable. But don't give up on linear TV. And I know the different perspectives around how CTV is going to impact in Europe, maybe for good reason, is maybe around definitionally what we're talking about. Because if you think about it on a convergent basis, it absolutely is going to have a major impact. So think about this big linear TV bucket. Again, proportionally, I'm sure it's similar in Europe, but these are US numbers. $68 billion in linear TV, 11 growing to 13 projected for this year in OTT or connected TV. It just so happens that, and yes, CTV is more addressable than linear historically, but despite all the viewership and the ad dollars shifting to OTT, they simply can't get there. Look at the size of the boxes. You can't fit all that ad inventory in there. In OTT, half of it's SVOD. Even what's AVOD has got limited the ad pods have less ad load, and so you simply can't fit all of that inventory into CTV, which is why linear is going to remain a significant component of the ad market for years, perhaps decades to come, and why people, I believe, should focus on the data-driven linear TV, because there are methods to be able to do some form of addressability in the linear markets, and that is going to be necessary in a channel that I believe will be supply constrained for quite some period of time, potentially indefinitely. Second area we think holds great promise is commerce media, formerly known as retail media, but that sounds old and tired, so we're giving it a new name, commerce media. And here, we're talking about a global e-commerce market it's founded on the fact that we have a global e-commerce market that grew 28% during the pandemic and is projected to be $5 trillion in 2021. For those watching at home, that's a 5 with 12 zeros after it. This is a ginormous market. Now, that's great for e-commerce companies, but what about advertising, you say, Terry? Well, think about the experience here in the US. E-commerce penetration grew to mid-teens percentage, around 15% leading into the pandemic. And then it spiked to 25% just in the year 2020. Well, think about the secondary or follow-on effects of that. What is essentially going to be needed is, just like wealth management, portfolio rebalancing of both the advertising mix and below the line promotion and marketing dollars to reflect this new reality, right? Think about it. All of that ad spend allocations were made in a world that was an 85-15 world, 85 retail, 15 e-commerce. Well, now the world is 75-25. And so the rebalancing is necessary is going to be enormous. Think about the size of these markets. In the US, total ad spend of $500 billion, below the line spend of $300 billion. That's $800 billion of total marketing spend. If 10% of that is needed to shift towards channels that convert to an e-commerce outcome versus a retail media outcome. Well, that's $80 billion that has to shift from physical retail-centric media to digital channels. We call this phenomena from end caps to mobile apps, and we believe this is going to have a massive impact. And by the way, all you have to do is look at Amazon, that has an integrated commerce and media model where they have a closed loop on data, efficient and effective channel for media spend and rapid growth. I mean, Amazon obviously in the last year has grown its media business to $24 billion. And that is the fastest largest growing media property in the world. This has not gone unnoticed by all other retailers who, in almost military lockstep precision, have launched their own retail media practices, largely to try and take advantage, even in some small fashion, the same kind of performance that Amazon has managed to pull off. And for the smallest retailers that can't afford their own setup, they have Criteo that'll do it for them. And by the way, if you think about what they're trying to accomplish, they're trying to do what I would call cylinderize the funnel. So if you think about a funnel, right, it's wide at the top, narrow at the bottom. And if it can be cylinderized, that is to say, you reduce waste with more targeted ad spend, helping efficiency, and you improve conversion with more effective targeting. So the throughput is greater. That helps efficacy. And then once you've nailed this model, you just want to step on the gas and widen that cylinder with scale. So we believe tremendous opportunities in commerce media. And the final area is programmatic, which you guys discussed at length. And we would note that we agree, by the way, that direct, guaranteed, and PMP is going to be the way forward, we believe, for a lot of programmatic spend, in particular at this time of chaos in and around identity. But we've also noticed another trend, which is that, supply path optimization, a recent significant trend, is effectively bringing horizontality back. Yep, that's right. A term first coined by Sir Martin Sorrell 10 years ago. In his context, it referred to the structure of ad holding companies. Here, we're not talking about that. Thank you, Sir Martin. What we're talking about here, by the way, only in a Luma presentation, where you got a mashup of Justin Timberlake with Sir Martin Sorrell. So there you go. So what we're talking about here is the structure of our industry, which was really built sort of in verticals, right? Companies either addressed demand or they addressed supply. And yet we note that, large companies like Google and Facebook have capabilities that span from demand to supply. And of late, other companies have attempted to build the same kind of horizontal reach via M&A, right? Xandr bought AppNexus, Amobi went to the supply side with Videology, Roku bought DataZoo, and recently Freewheel bought Beeswax. And all of this is an attempt to better control the ecosystem, take advantage of supply constraints, and hopefully wring some efficiencies out of this ecosystem so that the principals don't have as much sort of a tax to pay. And if this were to, manifest itself in other players and we have more sort of horizontal approaches, we'll have to get busy at Luma because it'll require a lot of M&A. Speaking of M&A, I mean, anytime you have change in an ecosystem, it tends to drive deals, and unprecedented change is likely to drive relentless M&A. And look, this isn't new, right? Companies have always had options to either build or buy. It's just that when you get such rapid change in an environment like we've had, well, companies tend to default to buy for purposes of speed to market. How do I know this is manifesting itself now? Well, just take a look at the deals in the media industry. Just in the last month, over $100 billion of transactions from some of the largest media names are taking place. And I think you can expect to see more of this, not only here, but also in Europe and across technology players as well. We note that this last deal, just rumored, recently that Amazon is buying MGM makes a lot of sense, and we think it'll potentially lead to some fun sort of pre-roll for all of those MGM videos. Just imagine it, right? Yep, the lion will roar. Or in this case, Jeff. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. Okay, and my final word is about rotten apples. And what do I mean by that? Well, Apple is the latest tech giant to restrict data flows to materially inhibit privacy-compliant targeted advertising. They would have you believe this is part of their altruistic mission as a great defender of consumer rights. Yet the company has clearly demonstrated that its primary goal is rather the protection of their outsized profits. Yes, that's right. The same company that charges $79 for a $2 piece of plastic is out for themselves. Shocker. On the privacy issue, they're hypocrites. They strengthened their own ad products within their SCAD networks and app store environments, just as they restricted their competitors' capabilities. But they do sell their competitors' data if the price is right. They sell search data to Google for $12 billion a year and cut a deal with the Chinese government to surveil users in order to access the lucrative China market. They abuse tax laws and operate a monopolistic app store that bullies competitive companies like Europe's Spotify. And now we're supposed to believe they're out to protect you. My advice, something is not rotten in Denmark. Something is rotten in Cupertino. And with that, I thank you all. It's a fascinating, interesting time right now. And I think the best advice to those players in the marketplace is agility. Be agile, because the rules and the technology environments we live in, Konstantin, are just so changing so rapidly.
Well, Terry, thank you ever so much for this fascinating presentation, unsurprisingly fascinating. We are over time, so we won't go into several questions, probably because we will all need about a week to digest all those insights. So in a week's time, your email will be flooded with clarifications. However, one quick question for one quick comment. I noted your point regarding M&As, and you wrote an article recently about the reasons behind this M&A boom you expect. Now, you being the luminary that you are, you're not saying this to support your business that does not need this sort of support. However, in the context of the very interesting pyramid of the walled, the hedge gardens, and the open internet, where do you expect most of the M&A activity to take place, and why, within the context of that pyramid?
So I think given the antitrust constraints, which I think are very appropriate, right? I mean, we have to have options, and we have to oxygenate the market. So I think the efforts of both European and US regulators to constrain the largest tech companies from an antitrust perspective is very much appropriate. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement at the top other than potential divestitures, but I don't hold my breath. I think we're going to see the preponderance of deals in that sort of hedged garden world. So, think of any publisher or platform that has supply constrained inventory, whether it's CTV or retail media or other. You will want to enable yourself, if you're going to go horizontality, as I mentioned, the old Justin Timberlake song, then I think you need certain capabilities on the other side. If you're in supply, you'll need capabilities on demand. The only way to realistically get there at any speed is through acquisitions.
Well, I will thank you very much for these insights. Sadly, we're out of time, but it's been a privilege to have you with us, and we'll certainly be inviting you back. And hopefully you'll be with us in a physical location somewhere in Europe to enjoy your time with us. Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you, Konstantin.
Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, having touched upon quite extensively on the issue of identity, this ties in very nicely with our next panel and our session on the post-third party cookie era. Many of us are wrestling with the issue and how it will change the way we do business. And it would be fascinating to hear from our panel shortly. Don't forget to submit your questions for the panelists using the Q&A box located at the bottom of the Zoom window. And at this time, I am delighted to introduce the moderator for this session, Andrew Hayward-White, our programmatic advisor at IAB Europe and partnership director at SeamThis. Drew, over to you.
Thanks, Konstantin, and welcome also. Today I'm joined by Tanzil Bukhari, Managing Director at EMEA for Double Verify, Katharina Arntzen, Head of Ads Privacy, EMEA Google, Alex Steele, President, Group M, EMEA Services, and Joanna Burton, CSO at ID5. Thank you all for joining and taking the time to talk to me about a post third-party cookie world and the opportunities and direction of the market. Obviously, with the backdrop of Terence's amazing animated field, Jeff Bezos field presentation, and also Daniel's earlier one, where it was good to see, obviously, both iterating the growth in digital advertising with the backdrop of obviously 2020 kind of kicking the wheels in motion with the deprecation of third-party cookies. It's kind of led to an explosion over the last 6 months. I think there was a slide in Terence's deck that kind of illustrated it, of lots of different alternatives. And it'd be great to kind of get your individual starting thoughts and takes on what the last 6 months has really been, and are we any closer in to figuring it all out for 2022? So, Katharina, I might start with you.
Okay, hi everyone. Do you hear me? Does the mic work?
Yes, yeah.
Amazing, it does, perfect. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Katharina Arntzen, and I'm head of Ads Privacy in-country leads EMEA on Google's go-to-market team. And well, in my current role, as well as in my previous role as head of Ads Privacy for Central Europe, I've been monitoring the changes of the ads ecosystem. And well, I have to say, like, user expectations, I mean, as we all know, are rising, and changes are happening. And according to Eurostat, the thing is that users believe that the amount of data we are gathering is so much that it can't be kept like safe. So as a result of this, user trust in the ads ecosystem is in decline, and we need to do something about this. Like, the web has to change, like, overall. So actually in 2020, Google announced a couple of changes, including that we stopped supporting third-party cookies, but obviously not without a plan in mind that advertisers and publishers can continue doing their business. And this plan in mind is known in the industry as Privacy Sandbox. And this year, actually, we announced the first couple of positive developments there around the feature around the product Flock, where we use machine learning and the creation of cohorts with similar interests. So this is what we are doing at the moment to address these changes, and hopefully, like, testing will come to Europe soon. It's kind of like being planned and will be announced to the wider public once we have more.
Excellent. Alex?
First on mute. Yeah, I hope you can hear me too. Go. Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Alex. I head up Group M services for EMEA, so work on the advertiser side. I'm happy to hear Flock is coming. I'm still curious on when, so I say that with a smile, because I think a lot of things is still in the unclear for some of us. So if we look at what we've been doing as a group, it's basically looking at from three phases. Phase one, and we basically started with that last year, was really around education and training of what's happening, what changes do we see in the ecosystem, what do we expect, and also what are the unknowns, being very transparent to our clients that there's still many unknowns. And I kind of like the presentation, the previous one, where we talked about the hedge garden. I think I'm going to steal that word, to be honest. Every time you learn something new, I never heard that one. But it's really around understanding the dynamics and explaining to our clients around what's happening within the walled gardens, what are the things like privacy sandbox, explaining what we know and what we expect to know. Second part is now where we're currently at, I would say, with our clients is more what we call an audit phase. And audit sounds quite heavy, but it's really with client by client start to analyze, okay, what is the tech stack we're using? What kind of campaigns are we doing? What kind of tactics are we implementing? How are you currently doing measurement? So really we have a quite extensive audit that we created for all our clients, which we're now doing across basically all our markets. Coming out of that audit is basically then the third phase where we're moving into, where slowly we're getting a bit more clarity around the options and what is possible and what's not. So this is really working towards solutions with our clients and saying, okay, these 5 things we now know, very simple examples around server-to-server integration for measurement. These are the things we can do. And these are some of the unknowns we need to work together and do a lot of test and learning. And that's the phase we're now really getting into. So we globally basically set up a global test and learn program. We refer to as team of teams, because it's not one group of people in our organization working on it. It's really around what does it mean from a strategy perspective, planning, how we leverage data, optimization, campaign activation, measurement. So different groups working on it and really trying to define what are the things we need to test and sharing that. So for instance, Vlog as an example, we probably learn more out of the US first with some of our clients, things that the trade desk is doing. What are the things we can learn out of the US directly already and prepare that in Europe, but also the other way around. What are the things we actually know here that potentially can be leveraged in other places? So it's really around learning together now and being agile and being fast around those learnings, making sure those learnings are shared quite rapidly so we can be on top of that. But no one has the full, okay, here's the answer, get ready, and this is done.
Excellent. And Joanna?
So from the last 6 months, there's a lot to unpack in there. So one of the things that I've really seen in the last 6 months is that more and more advertisers and agencies are coming to me asking more and more about universal ID. So that now Alex has just explained why I'm speaking to so many different people at Group M. So
sorry for that.
So thanks for that. But I feel like, you know, this is a topic that we've been talking about for a long time. In IAB Interact in Milan, we were just on the eve of GDPR coming into play, and there was a lot of conversation then about being privacy by design and how can we move to a new industry infrastructure. There was the excellent work done by the IAB with the transparency and consent framework, which has since been improved. So there was already a move towards privacy. There's already a problem with Firefox and Safari traffic being unaddressable if you can't use third-party cookies. So already those moves were in play, and Terry's presentation did a great job of summarizing that earlier. But then what I've seen, especially in the last 6 months, in the last year, since the Google announcement that Katharina explained that happened in January last year, more and more publishers have been talking with us about getting ready, having universal ID products available on their site and activating in a privacy compliant way. And then just in the last 6 months, I'm seeing more and more calls from the guys on the agency side and the advertiser side, seeking more and more information as that Google deadline approaches.
Excellent. And Tanzil, from your perspective, obviously as well, Terence mentioned it just before, that we focus in terms of the deprecation of third-party cookie around the audience and stuff, but there's a wider impact, right, isn't there? It's like measurement, site performance, all of those sort of things. So it'd be interesting to get your take.
Absolutely. Once again, like everybody else, happy to be here. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. The challenge with cookies going away is broader than just the targeting and the fact that we're not able to engage with our consumers in the same way as we have done in the past. I think the question that you're asking is, over the last 6 months, what have we seen? And I think it's a little bit like, it reminds me of when I was at university, right? You have a project to hand in and you leave it to the last minute. And as an industry, we're doing exactly the same thing. It's shocking. We've known for at least another 2 years that this was going to happen, and we're still at the stage where we're trying to work out what the next solutions are going to be. I think it's fair to assume we're not going to have a silver bullet. There isn't going to be one solution that sort of solves everything, and so there is a need for thinking and a need for discussion. But I think for me, when I look at the last 6 months, I actually don't think there's been a lot of new innovation. I think there's just been we've gone back and looked at the core principles of where our advertising has been for the last 10, 15 years. I mean, Terence mentioned sort of 3 areas. I think they're all relevant. And in isolation, they'll only do a small portion of what we need it to do. As a combination, that's really where the solution will come from. So when we think about contextual targeting, the context, the concept around context has been with us since I've been in the industry, and I've been in it for a long time, right? From when we were originally planning ads. So context has improved, and we'll talk a little bit more about how those improvements have come about. The concept around creative has been a topic in our industry for the last 10, 15 years. Where we talk about delivering the right message to the right person at the right time, and we sort of forget about delivering the right message, right? It's the right person at the right time has taken up all the sort of thought space. So it's good that we're starting to rethink about creative and think about attention to those messages, to those creatives. So I think a combination of custom, contextual, a combination of sort of authentic ways to find better attention or attention metrics are going to be what we've focused the last sort of year and a half on as a company, and look at solutions we're bringing out. But I think as an industry, in various iterations, that's really what the last 6 months have all been about for me.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So a lot of things to focus on, and I guess that kind of raises the question as to what agencies, and we'll start with the buy side, what agencies and advertisers should be focusing on. Terence kind of mentioned it might have actually been one of the Daniels mentioned, there's a lot of confidence on the buy side around having first party data, right? And the data that they have, but the activation and the difficulty of using it and utilizing it is the next kind of question. So we'll start with you, Alex. What do you think from a buy side perspective should be the focus? Is it like test and learn, or what kind of approach?
Good question. It's probably a combination of things. I think, yes, first party data is important, and not every advertiser will have the same richness of data. So you have to be accounting for that. So not every client will have the same starting point or same end point. I think if we start to look how we leverage that first party data, that's part of the challenges, and how we start to work with partners, and basically, again, Jerry, in the previous conversation around guaranteed and PMPs, and how do we actually start to work and have deeper and better relationship with publishers to bring that on board? Because again, just thinking around hashed emails, I have a similar opinion. I think it's sticky plasters towards the cookie, finding a solution that's probably not the solution. I'm not against it, just to be clear, but I don't think it's the future-proof solution we're going to be aiming for. So how do we do this in a privacy-first way? How do we leverage our clients' data? How do we combine it with our publisher or partner data? Is going to be part of the challenge, and that really depends on in which market you are, what MarTech and AdTech are you using, what data do you have. So there's a lot about almost redesigning the connected ecosystems for our clients based on a privacy-first approach, where the client's data is important, but again, dependent on what they have, how we connect that to the publishers. And on the other side, it's having conversation with publishers as well, about how do we make sure that they themselves not creating, I would say, mini walled gardens. I wouldn't call them then hedge gardens, but mini walled gardens in isolation, which they won't have the scale to actually be accessible and being able to work with them in a way that's scalable for agencies or for advertisers. So how do we also, I think as an industry, make sure that we create some synergies and collaboration around publishers, building consistent taxonomies, all those things as well, to make sure that we can actually build those new connected ecosystems in this privacy-friendly world. So I think there's around how do we collect better first-party data, how do we work with clients, how do we redesign those connected ecosystems together with our partners and publishers, but also how do we have market conversation with publishers to make sure that they really future-proof themselves, not just in isolation.
I'll chime in there if I may, Andrew.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a good segue.
Yeah, I don't think agencies and advertisers should really have to worry about this at all. It kind of annoys me that they do. This is an infrastructure issue. This is an ad tech infrastructure, and we should fix this problem. Alex's clients shouldn't care whether he's using Teams or Zoom or Google Meet. He's just able to take care of his clients and run the business as normal. So we think that the advertisers and agencies shouldn't really have to get into the issues of the infrastructure. I so hope we don't get more hedged gardens or mini walled gardens or, you know, breaking the internet up, because I'm passionate about the open internet, and I'm passionate about publishers and of all sizes, but long tail, small publishers, passion sites, utility sites, and full-fledged broadcasters and excellent newspapers with foreign correspondents being able to monetize the inventory that they've invested in. And I think that publishers are at risk. They're at risk now of not being able to properly monetize their inventory when the consumers are using the browsers where third-party cookies are blocked, not first-party, but third-party. And they're at risk of losing so much more revenue when Chrome, whenever it comes, removes third-party cookies from Chrome as well. And because of that, I've been really focused on speaking with publishers, publishers who have the most risk, publishers getting ready, looking to transact in a new way, working with Universal ID, but also working with other ID solutions in the market to try and be as ready as possible so that the advertisers who shouldn't have to worry can just have this problem fixed by the demand side platforms, the CDPs, the DMPs, and the rest of the advertising infrastructure, the ad tech infrastructure just working for them.
But I agree, and I hope you will, by the way. But I do have a worry that we probably won't have this one desk we can call and actually all is fixed. But I agree, it would be great if we get to that point.
I think this is an opportunity. Sorry, just to, Katharina, you go first, and I'll chime in.
Thank you. Okay, so to chime in here, from a Google and share the Google point of view, like we do believe that like privacy and performance are not at odds. I mean, obviously these are like challenging times for the industry overall, for marketers, for publishers, for everyone. But we believe it makes sense to engage now and shape the conversation. And I like Hansel's idea of that in uni days we kept everything to the last minute. Let's not follow this bad habit now and actually do a couple of things, because there are already things that publishers and marketers can already do. And we kind of bucketed into 3 areas: prepare, adapt, and evolve. So in the prepare phase, acknowledging, accepting, that user expectations have been rising and new legislations are in place, and making the most of first-party data. What Google has on offer here is, for example, the new version of GA or Google Site Tag. And then in the adapt phase, to start using machine learning, make the most of the data you're having, kind of do more with less. And last but not least, getting engaged in industry conversations. That's what Alex, you already said. It's an industry effort, overall. It's not up to a few players. At the end, everyone should engage so that the result in the end kind of makes everyone happy and everyone can kind of have a stake of this ad ecosystem.
Yeah. So I just wanted to come back to Joanna's point a little bit here. I think, the opportunity that GDPR and the privacy sort of changes that we're seeing, the opportunity that is for the industry is to reimagine the way we engage with our consumers, right? It's not about just replacing third-party cookies with a solution that essentially allows us to set it and forget it. It's an opportunity for us to reimagine. I think, the way that I see it is we have spent the last 10 years focused on the who. We're targeting. The question we should be asking ourselves is how, where, and why. And so, I think the solutions that we're going to look for moving forward, there isn't going to be a one solution fits all. I think the ID solutions are going to be critical to ensuring that we have some element of the who, but we really need to focus on the how, where, and why. And we see that manifesting itself in advertisers and even in a lot of cases, the agencies on behalf of the advertisers, helping them set what are the standards, what are the baseline quality metrics that they're going to want to put in place, right? What should they be looking for across their publisher network, across their inventory sets, and across Google and Facebook and Amazon as well, right? And you know, at a bare minimum, we see that, I mean, making sure that ads are viewable. You mean they're being viewed by humans rather than bots or any other fraudulent environments. You mean they're in the intended geographic area and in an environment that's suitable for the specific brand, right? And I think that level of quality, I think, is going to be critical for brands moving forward, and an opportunity for the industry to help build a better ecosystem, right? That building the better ecosystem isn't just for the advertisers or for the publishers. You know, the end goal here is to make sure that the consumers feel more comfortable engaging with ads and continuing to view ads and engage with ads. If they do that, we can maintain a free internet and all the other things that come with ensuring that we maintain a role for ourselves, right? So I think that's important that we get that across. But it's not just about the replacing the cookie, right? It's reimagining the world that we've lived and essentially what the next 10 years are going to be for us.
Yeah, absolutely. A shift back to thinking about what is the purpose of advertising and what's the objective and outcomes and the underlying driving factor of why advertising is there. You touched on a point around one size fits all, and it'd be great to get everyone's take on kind of there's a lot of, like, obviously varying legislations and interpretations and initiatives in market. Is it going to be multiple sort of solutions, or is there a global solution, or do we need to have more of an EMEA focus on finding solutions to this? So maybe Alex, I'll start with you.
Always start with me.
Yes.
Thank you for that one. Just give me no time to think at all. So I think there will be, so some of the things that will come as a solution, of course, will be global, because we work with global partners. Global, I mean, this is a global industry, right? So I'm pretty sure there will be some global solutions that are thereby also applicable for EMEA. I do think that next to that, we should explore together as a regional industry, let's call that, also some opportunities as well. I think there's a lot of great technologies but not just technologies, overall our industry, I think we're quite intelligent and smart to come up also with other solutions. So just refer to all the things around contextual and what can we do with that, but also reimagining, as Jess was saying, the industry. I think we'll also see some things, I would say, going back to the future in a way that we look at how do we leverage panel data in a different way? How do we do the things we've done in the past? Contextual in the end is always, it's been old school into new school now. So I think we're going to reimagine, and I think reimagine is a good word in a way that we're looking at things that we previously already done, but then in a new way from a privacy perspective. And I think as a region, and also in a market, we'll see some great innovation that can scale to other markets as well. So I don't think we're going to be totally dependent, maybe some global, like more from a technology, yes, but I think there's some great opportunities, again, by market, by region, with publishers, with advertisers, to come up with some great concepts and ideas that actually are fit for purpose. So I hope it's going to be a combination of the two.
So, Katharina?
Well, from Google point of view, I mean, the solutions we are working on may be sold, may be fledged, you know, are global solutions. However, if there are regional solutions in place or identity solutions, we still support them. We allow encrypted signals to go through the system. However, like in the long term, I mean, we see a focus on like first-party data and really like building new solutions. I think, as Temple said, of like to really like build a new web that's pretty safe and where users feel safe. So our mantra here kind of is like, we are not recreating the past, we are building for the future. So that's our point of view.
Excellent. Joanna?
Yeah, so I do think the solution will be global. I think it is a new infrastructure for the internet. It has to be privacy by design, but the technology needs to work as well in Europe as it does in the US and Japan and in Brazil, LGDP. We just need a solution that works for everyone, I think. And also to Tansel's point earlier, it should be a solution that also isn't just about targeting and addressability. I do think we need one-on-one addressability to be able to compete with the walled gardens and the hedge gardens. We need an ability to target each individual with a specific right time, right place, right message, as Terry was saying in his presentation. But we also need to be able to frequency cap, to measure, to attribute properly. So we need a new way of thinking that encompasses all of that. And to Daniel Knapp's, Dr. Knapp's point earlier, this is the delayed payback of the GDPR, the delayed gift of the GDPR. We've built technology in Europe that is GDPR compliant, like the most stringent privacy regulations that are in place so far. And we've already built a solution. So that, I hope, means that we're ahead as an industry, we're ahead of where we need to be in the US or where we need to be in Brazil and APAC in the coming years.
And Tansu?
So I think I agree with everybody. I think there's going to be a combination of both global and regional local technologies, right? I think the fragmentation we see in Europe is wholly different than the fragmentation that the Americans see across their industries there, right? We have the same level of publisher and user fragmentation, but we then have, a number of markets that we have to apply that across, right? So the challenges we're facing are different. The nuances we're facing are different. And I think, as I've said throughout, as we shift from the just focusing on the who to a broader set of metrics, we then, cultures come into play, understanding nuances by region, understanding the way that, in publisher-centric markets versus, open markets, right? There's a whole bunch of nuances that exist in markets outside of the States that we haven't historically really catered for. And I think there's an opportunity for us to reimagine that. So I do think from a technology standpoint, we are going to have global technologies that sort of work consistently across the globe. We're going to have regional nuances, really to help drive, sort of value at that local and regional level.
Brilliant. Excellent. Looking at time to make sure we've got enough to all gaze into the crystal ball one last time. By way of wrapping it up, we've obviously had kind of a view that we're leaving our homework to the last minute. There's a lot of opportunities out there, but there will be nuances and hopefully a global view as well. But it'd be great to get each of you to think about, in the next 12 months from where we are, what do you think are going to be the kind of key highlights within this area? And we all sitting here having failed the exam in 12 months' time? Hopefully not. I'll start with you, Katharina.
Well, if you're touching on highlights, I'd say, everyone's waiting obviously for flock tests to come to Europe. So once that's underway, we've got to send out the news, and the same applies obviously to Flash. On a general note, I'd like to say, well, once again, privacy performance are not at odds. I think we can all look positively into the future, and we are confident about the solutions that are being developed and that they will be ready and usable for the market at some point. So that's what I can say from Google's perspective for the time being.
Excellent. Tansu?
So I think we didn't really get into a lot of topics. I think half an hour is clearly not enough for this conversation. But we didn't talk about CTV. I know Terence mentioned it, but we'll see that continue to grow. I think the next 12 months are going to be interesting as we see that shift of consumers and where they're consuming media. So I think CTV is going to be an interesting growth factor. Joanna's mentioned at length that we need to be privacy friendly, privacy first, and I think that's going to be critical for all solutions coming to market. It'll be interesting to see how many of those solutions are able to deliver as good as, if not better, performance than what was perceived as third-party cookies. I actually think it'll be different rather than the same, but nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see where that ends up. Performance is going to be in the topic. It's going to be a news worthy sort of discussion for the next 12 months. We have to find the industry will look for a replacement, and I think it's a case of how do we get to a point where we can still talk about performance and not talk about cookies in the same breath. And I think the last thing that I'll say is, we've seen already a lot of players in the market sort of highlight their solutions as being sort of the sort of an answer to a problem that cookies are leaving. You know, I don't think contextual targeting is going to replace the cookie. I don't think measurement tools or first-party data environments on their own will replace the cookie. I think what we're going to have to do as an industry is come together, and those, I mean, all the solutions that we have will have to come together to create whatever the solution will be that replaces the cookie and allows us to engage target consumers, to give them sort of positive experiences and all in a privacy-friendly way.
Excellent. More collaboration, definitely. Always agree with that. Joanna?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you too. I think there'll be more collaboration, more industry conversations along the lines that you're leading here, and more tools being developed by the industry bodies, more standards. I'd expect more standards. What I'm experiencing is a huge thirst for information, which I think is an opportunity for industry bodies to keep guiding the way. I'm also seeing people looking, when I talk to agencies, looking for an alternative to DV360. So I think we'll see that when DSPs look to have more the ability to continue to do one-on-one targeting going forward. And I think we'll see more and more adoption of alternative identity solutions, including ours, I'm sure.
And Alex, I saved you for last because I kept on asking you first.
Well, lovely. Now it's even harder because everyone said everything. Right? So perfect. No, I can only echo the things that I already said. I think from a Group M perspective, we always talk about making advertising work better for people. I hope in 12 months, we're actually moving towards that as an industry. I think privacy first, we agree on. I think the tech getting more aligned, I think we agree on. One thing I do expect is, and I hope is around creativity. So how do we really become more creative, and how do we think around the consumers we're reaching in a creative way, and how can we leverage that? So I think that's an important one. And one thing I think that wasn't mentioned, but I do feel is, we haven't talked much about machine learning and all of those things, but I think with the data that will be available and the data that's not available, so working with less information, but making sure we actually leverage it, I think we'll see a change in the industry around how much will we still do manually versus what will be provided by machines. And I think as we move in this industry, I think we'll also see quite a seismic change in what is the technology, but also from the machine learning algorithm, all those things, what is provided by the machine and actually executed by a machine versus what's the role of the people, the agencies. And thereby, I think you'll see a shift in different skill sets of what we need. On one side, more the data skill sets, on the other side, more the creative skill sets. So you kind of see, I think, a need towards different people in the industry. And that's also, I think, quite interesting.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Alex, Joanna, Tanzo, and Katharina. Really interesting conversation. I'm sure we could have carried on talking for another hour very easily, a lot to cover. And with that, I'll hand back to Constantine.
Well, thank you so much, Drew, and a big thank you also to all our panelists for sharing some great insights and having a very lively panel discussion, which in true IAB Europe ethos blended both the broad and philosophical, but also the narrow and practical. And I should say at this stage that if anyone is interested in finding out more on this subject and taking an active role in shaping future developments, then please do sign up to IAB Europe's post-third-party cookie task force. It meets bi-weekly and it's open to IAB Europe members and national IAB members. And now we move to our third and final panel for the day, digital advertising in 2025, as we look to what the future holds, which I would say is probably the toughest panel of the day, not only because it has to look out much further and give some first estimation or forecast, but also, as it is the third panel, a lot of things have been said already, so it's quite difficult to find something totally original to say, but I'm sure that if anyone can, our four panelists are the ones to do it. So let me welcome at this stage in alphabetical order, Adam Bowie, the Business Development Manager for BBC World Service, Petri Kokkonen, the CEO of Relevant Media, Ilona Luboniemska, the Senior Director of Client Services for the Trade Desk, and Ryan Martin, Global Business Marketing Program Manager at TikTok. Good afternoon to you all.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know this is a challenging topic, and you know, as panels go, we would need about 4 to 5 hours to exhaust it. But let us try to be as focused as one can be with such a topic. And what I would like from you is a first comment, given all what we've heard as well, but also your personal viewpoints and insights, some key changes you see in the value chain. IAB Europe being an organization that represents the entire digital advertising and marketing value chain, some key changes you see in the value chain that are going to be important in the coming months and years as we head to, as the panel title says, 2025. And I think I could start with Ilona.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I think from my perspective, when I think about what's happening within the industry and about all the different changes, I would put my bets on the emerging channels and new channels and identity. And obviously the previous panel spoke quite vastly about identity, addressing it. But when it comes to the emerging channels, it's definitely going to be, from my perspective, connected TV, but also out of home and audio. At the traders, we've seen quite a lot of growth when it comes to connected TV. And last year in Q3, we saw year-on-year, 100% of the year-on-year growth. When it comes to spend going through connected TV, we definitely see way more interest in that channel from brands and advertisers. And that's obviously due to the fact that a lot of consumers and users are changing the way they are consuming media, and they are moving towards the streaming platforms and demand platforms, what obviously generates more demand. We also see broadcasters leaning in more, and we've got great collaboration with some of them. And then another one is out of home, which I think it's also a big one. And I think pandemic put things on hold a little bit for out of home, because obviously we were all being stuck at home. But in the UK, as we are going out the pandemic, or hopefully the pandemic is coming to an end, and we are sort of more out and about, we see so much interest when it comes to out of home and serving and capturing users' attention as they are out and about. Advertisers and brands are very interested in making the most out of all these electronic screens, whether that's on the bus stops or tubes. And then obviously audio as well. I think it's also a channel that has been on the rise for quite some time. And then again, pandemic it definitely has picked up throughout the pandemic and continues to rise.
Adam.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with a lot of that. I think people have talked about some of this stuff. I mean, there's the continued M&A in the space and the consolidation, which, you know, from content creators and media owners right through to the technology, we're just going to see continued growth in that. I think looking from the sort of content end of things, we'll get an idea where subscriptions are really going. There's a lot going on there. We're seeing continued things in the area that I look at in particular, which in podcasting. You've got Apple just launching its offering alongside people like Spotify also announcing theirs. Where that exactly gets to, I think over the next few years will become a bit clearer, because the volume, to what extent consumers are willing to take on the level of offerings they're going to have available to them. I think as well, regulation is going to probably be a key part of some of this stuff. You know, I work for a public service broadcaster, and I think with some of these technologies, looking at what's happening in CTV and so on, the visibility of PSBs across Europe will concern some people, I think, and whether that leads to a little bit more regulation to maintain some of that visibility is something to look at.
Very true, very true. Petri, the perspective from the north of Europe and relevant media.
Thank you, Konstantin. The company name is Relevant Digital, but it was quite close anyway. No worries about that. But yeah, our company works with sell side. We help publishers to develop their digital advertising sales. So the perspective where we are coming is heavily sell side focused. When thinking about the current privacy trends, what we are seeing, and the changes what we will face in the cookie landscape, I think that it will give a quite good position for those companies who are able to get users logged in and collect first-party data. So in practice, it means that I think that the following years will be easier for global giants, surprisingly. So they will be in quite good position, but the situation will be quite okay for local bigger publishers who are able to provide sticky content for audiences. Commerce media will be most likely quite successful since they have the data and possibility to sell the products directly. But what I'm personally a bit worried about is like the local European mid-size smaller publishers, how they are able to survive during next years. They need to be really smart when they are developing their advertising offering for advertisers. Most likely they need to partner with right companies, with each others to build bigger data pools, and they need to make also like smart decisions when they are choosing their technology partners. That was my top of mind.
Absolutely, and you guys at Relevant Digital, and given the strong position, the relatively stronger position of publishers in several Northern European countries, certainly have experience with that. A first comment from Ryan.
Good afternoon. I think from my perspective, all elements of the value chain need to make changes, and for me, it needs to see people being put at the heart of that, and that comes across in three really key areas. So, firstly, I think we need to make sure we're seeing consumers as people. How often are we guilty as an industry, talking about consumers and talking about data points? And we need to remember that, those data points are representative of people. You need to remember that humanity. This year, thanks to the pandemic, we've realized that people, love to spend time, creating videos in their kitchens or, singing along to jaunty sea shanties. And, that's something that only people can tell you about. The second thing is I think we as an industry can do more. I think the recent IPA census studies are really quite shocking. We've seen that women were disproportionately more affected by the pandemic, according to that IPA census. So, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusivity as an industry, and I think we need to make sure that we're doing enough. And I certainly think we can be doing more in that respect. And finally, for me, it comes into how we as an industry are enriching people's lives. Consumers and people have let brands into their homes, and people are walking billboards when they're wearing their headphones out and about. And it's about creating experiences that can add value and add richness to their lives and make their lives better. So it's about humanity at the heart of making people's lives better.
Thank you, Ryan. In the last panel, the panelists regretted they didn't have the time to touch upon connected TV, so it's time to get our own back. No, we saw that connected TV and audio, in a different way, evidently, are considered principal growth areas. What are the barriers to growth or the tipping points for growth, the key catalysts that we may expect to see those two markets, if you like, acquire a dynamic that we've seen, for instance, in the United States, and to make them much more prevalent in 2025. So Ilona, perhaps a first comment from you?
Sure, yeah, and as you said, I think we saw a lot of growth when it comes to connected TV in the US already, and obviously US is a little bit further ahead of us due to the connected TV market being very, very different. From our perspective at the Traders, we obviously put a lot of focus on connected TV. And over the past year and a half, year and a half, we've seen a lot of a movement when it comes to connected TV. Things have really picked up. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen in Q3 100% year-on-year growth. This is absolutely unbelievable in the UK when it comes to spend being dedicated to connected TV. We have also released not so long ago this report called Future of TV, which shows that 19% of all population in the UK spends on average 2 working days streaming content, which is huge, and that obviously creates an amazing opportunity for brands, for advertisers to appear in front of that audience. I do also think that connected TV doesn't necessarily have to be when it comes to thinking whether we should be spending in linear or connected TV. It's not exclusive. I think we could be doing both. I think it's important to bear that in mind, because all the data and insights that we gather from connected TV can definitely inform even better advertising when it comes to the traditional TV. So I think there is a lot of growth, and we've seen that at the trade desk. We've been integrated with broadcasters. As I mentioned earlier, they definitely lean in more. So we have integrations with Scottish TV, with Channel 4. You might have seen recently in the press also our release when it comes to integration with Sky. And that obviously creates a lot of opportunity, especially talking about the UK and talking on behalf of the trade desk, having 70% access to 70% of the AVOD inventory in the UK is absolutely outstanding and amazing. And and we will continue obviously evolving. I do think there is still a lot to do, and I think data and measurement are these areas that we will have to look at for sure and come together as an industry to make these things better, improve them. But I do believe that connected TV is definitely an area to watch, and it will benefit all of us, as well as offer relevant advertising to the users and audiences.
Yeah, if I may shortly add, I believe that all kind of video advertising will continue growing, because video is capable to offer a really good awareness for advertisers. So it will thrive, not just connected TV, but it will be the major part, obviously.
And Petri, since you jumped in, what about audio? Audio is considered for publishers, like the ones that relevant. Digital is a strategic partner, also a great opportunity. How are things playing out in the markets you cover?
It's still early days. What comes to the advertising part, what we are seeing from like different studies is that people are listening. Definitely, they are listening to digital audio, podcast, streaming audio, and that is here. It's not something what is coming. People are already consuming audio, but the advertising market is really small. And I think that to reach that, Daniel's, was it 1.1 billion during next 4 years or something like that, estimation for the future, so that we would be able to achieve that, we have to see some kind of consolidation in the digital audio market, not necessarily companies buying each other's, but at least the market needs to be able to put the inventory in one basket, for example, in programmatic, so that the advertisers are able to buy big enough reach easily. I think that is required.
Thank you, Petri. Adam, BBC is, the quintessential audiovisual giant, as far as I'm concerned. So, what is your take here?
I think, there's a couple of things there from the video perspective. I think we're going to see those changing consumer habits, and I think it's always interesting, isn't it, when we go through these things? It's probably not as fast as we think it's going to be, but not as slow as you sometimes wonder it is, as people move from a broadcast to a sort of IP delivered consumption models, and obviously that then impacts on things like connected TV to an extent. I know there's other things you can do, but if I look at specifically at audio, I think as Petri says, there's definitely a lot of growth still to come. Audiences are getting there fast. and just the interest, you know, the way they're consuming music and they're consuming podcasts is moving at an enormous pace. I think the advertising market is maybe, you know, look to speed that along. I think programmatic in audio is still a very small part of it, and but so there's a lot of room for growth there, and seeing a little bit more of brand advertising and moving away from some of the direct response, which has traditionally led to it. I think the interesting question will actually be a strong part, not actually of BBC podcasts, but of most podcasts, the host-read kind of advertising, and whether that's actually sustainable as we grow to a much broader mass market medium will be interesting, because obviously when you're asking one particular individual to read maybe dozens or potentially hundreds of different ads, that's not a sustainable model. So how that develops, I think, you know, those will be sort of growing pains that probably in the audio field we actually look forward to.
Ryan, a comment from you.
So I guess you know, on the subject of connected TV, it's not a space that we as TikTok are currently operating in. But you know, what I do know from the proliferation of that market is there is, you know, lots of new players coming into the market, and I think it's all there's going to be some real challenges from some of the free to play kind of broadcasters that come in with ad funded. What I do know is that, you know, it's with every new advertising channel, there becomes lots of challenges in terms of the standards that are following, the taxonomies and the different definitions of things. So as my role as IAB chair of the brand advertising committee, I would recommend everyone reads through the brand safety guide for connected TV that we published in the last couple of months to kind of get up to speed on all the potential pitfalls. In context of audio, you know, we know that TikTok plays a huge role in audio discovery. So, you know, when users are coming to look onto TikTok, 73% of them are looking to discover new experiences and new things, and music's a huge part of that. And the impact that TikTok's having on kind of music charts around the world and across Europe is a testament to the discovery element that TikTok plays in that journey.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and thank you for the plug for the brand safety guide. I'll forgive you for stealing my lines. You know, I wanted to say that at some point. Now we're somewhat pressed for time, and I have two things I would like to ask you. So I'll split you in two couples. So I would like a comment, because this is coming up again and again, on the near future of identity. We've heard already some interesting perspectives, but you know, with industry luminaries like yourselves in the panel, I'll have to ask again. So a question for Ilona and Adam, a comment on the near future of identity as you see it. Ilona, you can go first.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, it's a very interesting and important subject, I suppose. Cookies are going away, and this is something that we will need a new identity or solution for that. And so at the Trade Desk, we've also been working quite hard on finding or addressing that for quite some time right now. And I really liked how the last panel sort of talked about it in a sense of reimagining it, rather than sort of just putting a solution that may somehow fit the needs. I think the way we look at it at the Trade Desk is it's an opportunity for us to get things better, to improve things. I think it's important to remember that the value exchange of the open internet is not changing, and free content requires advertising. And I think Unified ID 2.0 that we've helped build, we see that as a new common currency for open internet. You might have seen yesterday, I think it was in Adweek, there was an article where we hand in the code of Unified ID to IAB. So it's not like we are going to obviously have controls over it. We've helped to build it for the industry. And I think that's the important thing. I think we have to, when it comes to times like this, when it's not an individual's problem, it's an industry thing that needs addressing. And so we wanted to create something that will help all of us get things better, improve things. We all, I think, agree that cookies, even though they've been around for a very long time, they weren't perfect. And I think perhaps it's the right time for them to go away. And I look forward to obviously having us adopting Unified ID. And I think we are testing it already in the US, and hopefully tests will be coming to Europe very soon too.
Adam.
Yeah, it's interesting. The BBC, obviously, we have to take the privacy and those kind of things very seriously, and we do. And when it comes into any of our agreements with commercial providers and everything, that's a key part of it. I think particularly in the audio space is interesting is that cookies haven't been so much of a part of it because looking at podcasting in particular, it's quite old technology in that regard. So they the tracking opportunities are limited. That said, you definitely find there's been a lot of third-party acquisition of data to supplement what people have got, and that's going to be challenged. I think the question will be is to what extent some of the bigger parties are able to, who've got really strong first-party data, to what extent they'll muscle out some of the people who don't have it and don't have that depth of data and how that impacts, because we're certainly seeing big players that maybe hadn't previously considered audio. They probably had video, but they hadn't audio as a major part of their strategy, are absolutely moving into that space. And so that's going to be the challenge, if you like. But that's throughout the industry. It's not just limited to audio.
Thank you, Adam. And a final comment from Ryan and Petri on a different topic. We saw a lot of data concerning advertising, but also concerning e-commerce, and how those two are in a way converging, if you would permit the term, even though it's slightly heavy. Your take on this trend, given all the data we've seen. Petri, we'll start with you.
Yeah, in generally, it is a super interesting trend what we are seeing around the commercial media, commerce media development. Terence did launch that term in his presentation, and I would like to take a bit wider like context here. So it's not necessarily just e-commerce and not necessarily just digital advertising. We are seeing that also like the local retailers, they are building their media assets in all fronts, of course in digital, but also in traditional side, and it is quite clear that retailers will take part of their money what comes to the advertising budgets. But I think that it will be really interesting to follow that, where that money is shifting, where who will be suffering during this retail media growth. Is it coming from the traditional media or some digital channels? We will see. But the trend is here. It's not just global, it is also global, and it's super interesting to follow that, what will happen during next years.
Thank you, Petri. Ryan.
I mean, I think the guys in the previous panel touched on this as well, but it still comes down to that classic adage of being in the right place at the right time. The only challenge to that is that, the purchase journey that used to sometimes take consumers, a week, 5 weeks, is now happening in 5 minutes, or in some cases 5 seconds. So the challenge to advertise is about being in the environments where this kind of change is happening. From my experience at TikTok, we know that 71% of users have been kind of inspired by things they've seen on TikTok to consider a purchase, even if it's not something they were thinking about or considering before. So being in those environments and being part of that kind of moment of moving from a passive to an active mindset is going to be essential. And then, of course, the second part of that comes down to the creative that you're delivering to those people to kind of help them on that journey.
Well, thank you all very much. I think not only you addressed many of the things, many of the issues that we're discussing, but also you're opening up new avenues of discussion, like for creative, which If we were at the physical Interact, we will continue over the gala dinner. Right now, we will continue in committees and online fora, but we will meet again. So thank you so much, Ilona, Adam, Petri, and Ryan, for your insights. And now we will move on to our closing keynote for the day. And we are delighted to have with us Tina Bochler, the head for global media and agency operations at Nestlé, to share the brand perspective from a major global advertiser on the challenges and opportunities in digital advertising and marketing in the near future. Tina, thank you so much for being with us and finding the time. Thank you for joining us. Do we have Tina?
Constantine, can you hear me?
Yes, Tina. Thank you so
much. Okay. Hello.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. It is a privilege to have you with us.
Yes, and it's good to see you back. I mean, last time we met in person, I think it's 2 years ago, right?
Yes, and I haven't changed a bit, right?
No, not at all.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Now I feel taller as well. The screen is yours, Tina. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Over to you.
Yes, I'm now trying to share my screen. So let's have a look if it works. So, can you see it?
Yes, indeed. Super.
So, first of all, Constantine, when you asked me to come in to speak today, you were asking me to speak as an advertiser, and I'm trying to do that knowing that Nestlé is one of the multinationals, and I was also really keen to listen a bit the panels that were in front of me, because they touched many of the topics that we at Nestlé are working on. So I wanted to share with you, first of all, as the last 500 days in all of our lives have been changed dramatically. So I went back to my photo stream, and here you can see a picture that was the last business trip I did in 2019, slightly before Christmas time. We went to the US, to New York. This is in the lobby of World Trade Center. And as you can see, it is a really great team of Nestlé folks together with our agencies. And we are together standing, workshopping. And this was somehow a very different part of my life. So, I mean, everything has changed. And also I found in my stream some pictures. Please do not share them. Yeah, it's not the most pleasant ones. At the left-hand side, this was the first one when I took a plane wearing a mask. Yeah, and you can see a few more here of the real life of a media head working with teams, working with the Chinese Nestlé teams in a media pitch. Yeah, I just wanted to share with you to bring all of us on the same page, and also I would say welcome to the new normal. So I mean, more than ever, we had to work from home. We couldn't see people we wanted to. Yeah, couldn't talk to the colleagues. It was all on Zoom or Teams and different video streams. We couldn't travel. We couldn't live our lives. And it was not only us. When I look at the Kantar data, the recent study they do in COVID-19 research, Wave 9, you see that people are really now living differently, consuming media differently, and also shopping differently. So what does that mean for us? First of all, if I look here at the data, it's interesting to see that there are behavior changes. For example, that people around us eat healthier. Earlier today, we already touched on the media behavior that has changed. So social media usage, video content, video gaming, streaming services, all booming. And also we at the advertiser side, we have increased the online media share during the last years. So last year it went to an all-time high of 47% in 2020. Also, we saw that the shopping behavior has changed. And I found it really interesting here in this study, we see that during the pandemic, people buy 35% of their groceries online. So this came up from 21%, and it will stay through 2021. Even China increased on an already high level, and African and Latin markets experience the biggest increases in grocery e-commerce. So what we can also see is that the attitudes of our consumers are changing. They want to feel in control as they shop. They want to find the balance in health and food choices. They support brands that resonate with their values. And people are looking more for personalization. We touched on it earlier in the panels as well, when they interact or when they purchase their goods. So I would say these trends will keep on growing. What we have as an advertiser are challenges and opportunities. So most importantly, we need to focus on the consumer experience. Provide an inspiration and the information that consumers want and need, helping consumers finding easy solutions in their everyday lives. To stay relevant, we need to understand and to listen to their needs more than ever. Here on the screen, you can see an example from Nestle in LATAM, where we support families with recetas. And we do it also in Europe, in Asia. So highly relevant in LATAM. My regional colleague shared with me that already now 50% of our website traffic come through the recipe solutions. Yeah, so consumers, I would say, they appreciate it. They have high expectation when it comes to brand engagement. Therefore, we put engagement into the core of our digital transformation and giving people relevant and personalized experiences. And we need to accelerate fast. Another example I wanted to share with you is coming from Australia, KitKat. We can see here on the screen the campaign idea, snap out for it. And this whole campaign is about everyday frustrations in the Wild West. So the idea was tailored to several audiences, platforms, and engaging through relevant content and different moments. Cultural insights and data signals fed into the shot, ensuring all content was flexible to be personalized, which was then planned by our media agency with precision and implemented. So let's have a closer look. I hope it works. First on YouTube, let me see. I give you 2.
Have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
Quick, let us in!
What's the password?
Moonshine.
It has a number in it.
Moonshine 123.
And at least one capital letter.
When you need to snap out of it, have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
So there were plenty of those examples. What is really important is that the dynamic content strategy delivered strong on the ad recall scores. And So, and the content was delivered with precision across multiple platforms. And you can see it was also connecting to local elements like elections that were going on. What we also did was the content to be tailored to dating frustrations. And later we invested also in some innovation. The ROI of the whole setup for KitKat has steadily increased through better media allocations and also the strong creatives. And I like very much in the panel before, we touched a bit on creativity, and I can confirm that strong creative is really driving the ROI. So let me also share on innovation into gaming.
Attention gamer, it's your 55th match straight. You're missing shots. A break is advised. And some light reading, perhaps. Game on.
So what is enabling best-in-class experiences? I would say we need to understand our consumers and needs, the habits, and then implement the right communication from packaging into digital advertisement. And what we also need on our side, on our partner side, is agility and an empowering culture. So it is very important to have a mindset of embracing change and high ambition, team spirit, people with technical skills and diversity. We at Nestlé, we have several programs in place to transform, for example, to increase the number of women in managerial positions. So this is around talent management, enhancing mentoring, sponsorship programs to prepare high potential women for senior executive positions, training of managers in unconscious bias, reverse mentoring, inclusive workplaces. So already today, 43% of these roles are held by women. And there is more to do. And we all know that it's just coming step by step. So our gender balanced acceleration plan is targeted to the top 200 senior executive positions. And here we have the ambition to grow from 20% currently to 30% by 2022. So with this, I want to quickly share with you on the crowd around media communication advertisement. And here we are already advanced, also on embracing change, agility, and also empowering culture. So here you can see the global media community. And the core of this community is a global media council. This is a team that we started to work with end of 2018 already. This team is about driving our transformation in media communication, leveraging expertise across markets from China to US, from Italy to UK, and vice versa, and to learn from the best. Together, we also want to better understand the consumer needs, the media usage, the advertising impact, and together with our market research experts, data experts, agencies, and digital partners, we work hand in hand to optimize our own skills, services of agencies, and lead our digital partners into the future. Another enabler for agility and empowerment is our Digital Media Center of Competencies. This is a model to boost effectiveness in online advertisement. So experts from leading industry partners working together with our Nestlé media community to succeed in a rapidly moving area of digital advertisement. So the DCOC works on innovative solutions such as DCO, e-retail media, advanced TV, and drives a lighthouse pilot program. One of the examples I wanted to share with you today how we create engaging brand experiences comes from Indonesia, is on Lacto-Grow. Lacto-Grow is a milk drink for young kids. So here, as you can see, we implemented the first DCO campaign last year with global DCO technology to drive consideration and try through personalized messaging in 3 different audience segments. And you can see that there's a process behind the technology and that we really could improve our outcomes. So cost efficiency was improving, higher engagement, and a increase in the consideration. And all of that, and here is an example from Indonesia, all of that is test and learn, market by market, category and brand by brand, yeah, is all very, I would say, promising, requires agility, requires skills, and also the collaboration and the willingness to transform. As we need an environment which is good for consumers and for our brands, I wanted to share with you also that we stand for quality in media. So as an advertiser, we have already many years ago decided to fight against fraud, against lack of viewability, against unbrand safe environments, and against intransparency. So at the right-hand side, you can see here the original document, Nestlé Digital Media Responsibility Plan. It was newly issued in March. And we are doing all of that in a very, I would say, intense way of working, investing, and working with partners and agencies to improve, because quality in advertisement is not negotiable. So we are paying close attention where our advertisement is being placed. And we are making it sure that it does not appear next to the harmful content. It's more important than ever to ensure safe content for people who are spending more time in front of their screens. And no one can do this alone. So therefore, we became one of the first advertisers to join the WFA GARM initiative. And as you know, here we are working together as an industry to create common standards for a safer and more responsible internet environment. I also like very much the comments that came in the earlier panels on that one. I believe that this reimagination, yeah, that everyone should engage, and we as advertisers, we also have to step in. So consumers place their trust in us, and we owe them to make sure that our brands do not appear alongside inappropriate content or on websites that are not in line with our values. What is a great example for WFA is, for the first time, platforms have agreed to aggregate and focus their transparency reports in a single framework. And this framework allows the advertising industry to track the removal of harmful content from ad-supported media, and also track the levels of reporting available to them from media platforms. Yeah, last but not least, let me quickly share on our cookieless. Yeah, you touched on it earlier. And what I wanted to share here, and this is just a placeholder, what you can see here, is that we at Nestlé, we welcome the move into a cookieless future, as personalization has been central to our marketing strategies already in recent years, and will be in the future. For all of that, we need data, but we will only collect and use consumer data in a way that's respectful of people's privacy. So we strongly believe in data privacy and transparency that meet consumers' expectation and government regulations. We support all initiatives that improve user privacy in digital advertisement. We partner with industry leaders, for example, IAS, to ensure ad verification and brand safety. And we stand up in the industry to make the advertising industry better. So with this, Constantine, let me conclude. The new normal is now. Events as Interact are key to connect and to learn from each other. Let's embrace the new normal. Let's transform together. And also let's make the advertising industry better. Thank you.
Well, Tina, thank you so much for those insights and for this uplifting message, including, the emphasis on innovation and creativity that you brought, which is something that we mentioned earlier. And I'm sure the message resonates because when major global advertisers such as Nestle speak, I can assure you the ecosystem listens. We will take those messages to heart, and we'll thank you again for your time. There could be time for a lot of questions, but we are hopelessly behind. So for the moment, we will thank you again most warmly for your time and attention to our event, and we look forward to welcome you back physically next time to IAB Europe's Interact. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you very much.
Good. And now we're almost at the end of the day, of the first day of Interact 2021. And we hope that you found it as valuable and enjoyable as we have. Don't forget that tomorrow we start at 2 o'clock CET for our Policy and Data Protection Day, where we will be diving into all things transparency, compliance, and enforcement in digital advertising. And we will have a major keynote as well from Commission Vice President Jourova. Now, we will also be discussing on Thursday standards and frameworks starting at 12 CET. So be sure to head over to iabeurope.eu/interact to sign up and get involved on those 2 days. Now, we've had hundreds dialing in today, and we really hope many of you will be able to join us for Interact 2022, where we hope to be in person discussing many of the changes which have happened over this momentous year. So when the save the date comes, please sure to note it in your diaries. Now, one of the events, this is last but not least for today, certainly not least, one of the events which is equally anticipated each year, it's the Mix and Research Awards of IAB Europe. And a big thank you to everyone who entered the awards this year. And whilst we're not able to bring you, as we mentioned earlier, a gala dinner and an award ceremony, we have been able to have a competition which has been judged by a jury of experts to which we are most thankful and grateful. The award winners are now shown on our website, but I'm delighted to be able to reveal who they are live right here. And I want at this moment to give the floor to our Chief Marketing Officer, Helen Massard, who will do this with me. Helen.
Hi, Constantine. First of all, congratulations on hosting and moderating day one of Interact. I think we're 3 hours in now, so you've done a fantastic job, and I think everyone will agree that you've managed to keep us all on time and help steer some fantastic conversations.
Well, time is relative, they say, so perhaps, yes, I've kept you on time.
You have. So we will move on to the awards, but just to echo your comments, Constantine, we saw firsthand the amazing entries that we had, and we kicked off at the beginning with Idex and saw the positive growth there. This year, we didn't expect to have as many entries as we did in 2020, and we actually ended up with double the entrants from the previous year, which I think is a great testament to the innovation, the creativity, the strategic management that kind of continued through these adverse times. So we would just like to say an even bigger thank you to everyone who submitted a campaign and worked on all of these this year. Our jury, as you can see here, we had experts on the Mix Awards. We had nearly 20 members to help review all of the different submissions. And there was 12 judges on our research jury, and all of them were incredibly impressed. But it did mean that we had to be extra stringent this year So the short list, we've had lots of emails, people asking, why they didn't make the short list. Maybe in other years you probably would have. It's just that there was such an overwhelming response this year. So with that, we're going to crack on and we're going to look at the Mix Awards first. And then after we presented these, we will put all of the information up onto the website. So for the Mix Award Europe, this is to recognise and celebrate the best digital advertising campaigns across Europe. So typically these have been entered into a digital awards competition for a local or national IAB or competition. We have 19 categories to go through. So Constantine, I'm delighted to have you here to help me kind of get through all of these. So let's go to the first award. So the first award is for the brand advertising campaign. And I would just like to say that for each category, we have the option, or the jury had the option of awarding a gold, silver and bronze. As you'll see, some categories not always had a gold winner. Standards are incredibly high, but as we go through this, you'll be able to see who was awarded what. So Constantine, over to you to announce the brand advertising campaign 2021.
Yes, and I would just like to say that as you saw from the jury panel, this is the ecosystem embracing and giving essentially the vote of confidence, the vote of approval to those campaigns. We have media, platforms, agencies, solutions providers. So these are not just any awards, they are truly, in my view, unique. So for the brand advertising campaign, the silver goes to the campaign No More Tags, submitted by Cotton Media Agency, Speed Media. The bronze and 2 bronzes for the campaign Furiously Fast Premier League with Canal Plus, submitted by Havas Media Warsaw and Havas Warsaw, the creative agency. And another bronze for the Dove Show Us Russia Y2 campaign, submitted by Initiative Russia, the advertiser being Dove and of course Unilever. So congratulations.
Thank you, congratulations. And then we move on to branded content.
There's only a bronze in branded content. The campaign is Connecting Irish Women Through Branded Content with an Post, submitted by Core. The advertiser is AN Post.
Fantastic. And then we move on to campaign effectiveness.
Campaign effectiveness. The gold goes for the Furiously Fast Premier League with Canal Plus campaign, again submitted by Havas Media Warsaw and the advertising being Canal Plus. Silver, the campaign is Get Through the Hardships, Get Online, submitted by Proof. The advertiser is Cloudcard Bulgaria. And the bronze goes to Bankinter, the bank that sees money the way you do. It's submitted by Havas Media Spain and the advertiser is Bankinter. And another bronze, Wilkinson, Sharpening Your Style Since 1772, Gaming. It's submitted by Wavemaker Poland, the advertiser being Wilkinson and Edgewell Person.
Congratulations to all of those. Then we move on to digital audio.
There's a silver in digital audio advertising. The campaign is Listen Up, delivering personalized audio ads at scale for Bose, submitted by Emilian Ads. The advertiser is Bose. Another silver, the campaign is Mental Airbag, submitted by Wavemaker Hungary. The advertiser is BMW Group Hungary. And a bronze for the campaign To Be a Girl Child in the Changing World, submitted by digital partners, the advertiser being the Aydin Dogan Foundation.
Brilliant, thank you. And then we move on to digital out-of-home advertising.
There's a gold, the campaign is Dogvertising, submitted by Mediacom, the advertiser being Pedigree Dentistics. And a silver, the campaign is Simulacra, a sculpture created by the forces of the city, submitted by the Screen Network, Band Generator, and the advertiser is Screen Network, Band Generator.
Congratulations to those. Then we have direct response lead generation.
Silver goes to Domino's Most Awakened, rewarding late night NBA fans the next day. That's the campaign, and submitted by Arena Media Spain, the advertiser being, of course, Domino's Pizza. A bronze goes to the How to Train a Machine campaign, submitted by MediaWorks, part of Core, and the advertiser is Liberty Insurance.
Fantastic. Moving on to effective use of data.
There's a gold here. The campaign is Water Index by Finish, submitted by Havas Media Turkey, and the advertiser is Rekit Bekinzer, Finnish. Silver goes to the advertising campaign submitted by Mediacom, the advertiser, of course, Pedigree Dentistics.
Brilliant, well done to those. And then we move on to games and esports.
We have a goal here. The campaign is L'Enfant Bleu, the Fortnite undercover avatar. It's submitted by Havas Sports and Entertainment Paris. The advertiser is L'Enfant Bleu. And a silver, the campaign is Gaming Without Barriers, submitted by Fantasy Expo and Polska Liga Esportowa. The advertiser is Fantasy Expo and Polska Liga Esportowa.
Then we move on to influencer marketing.
We have a bronze here with the campaign Trésor and Le Stream, a story of mystery, engagement, and redemption, submitted by Karat, and the advertiser is Kellogg's Trésor.
Congratulations to those. Move on to integrated advertising.
The goal goes to the Chif Beautiful When Clean campaign, submitted by Mindshare, the advertiser being, of course, Unilever and Chif. A silver for the Wake Up After 6 p.m. campaign, submitted by Proof, advertiser is Fritz Kohler. And a bronze also for the We Don't Know, We're Just Asking Questions campaign, submitted by Sector 7 Hub, and the advertiser is catmobile.ro.
Thank you, Constantine. Looking at native advertising.
We have a bronze. The campaign is Pumas Alonso's virtual music tour on GTA, and it's submitted by Havas Sports and Entertainment Paris, the advertiser being, of course, Puma.
Okay, now we move on to our non-profit and corporate social responsibility, and I would just like to flag our judges in total for the Mix Awards. We had 2 separate sessions lasting 4 hours each, and this was one of the most hotly contested categories that we looked at. The quality was absolutely outstanding, so really delighted to let you announce the winners for this, Constantine.
Well, it was a year for corporate social responsibility. It was a year that really made us rethink many things. So the gold goes to the L'Enfant Bleu campaign, the Fortnite undercover avatar, submitted by Havas Sports and Entertainment, the advertiser being L'Enfant Bleu. We have 2 silvers, one for the Fair Tales campaign, submitted by Havas Media, Sales and More, Publicis, VMLY&R, Poland, and Point of View, the advertising being Odea Bank, and a silver also for the Water Index by Finnish campaign, submitted by Havas Media Turkey, the advertiser being Rekit Bekinzer, Finnish. 2 bronzes, one for the Chif Beautiful When Clean campaign, submitted by U Studio, powered by Oliver, the advertiser being Unilever Chif. And another bronze for the Gaming Without Barriers campaign, submitted by Fantasy Expo and Polska Liga Esportowa, the advertiser being Fantasy Expo and Polska Liga Esportowa.
Fantastic, huge congratulations to all of those. Then we move on to offline digitalization.
We only have a silver here. The campaign is Heyrats, the Waterless Fountains by Finnish, submitted by Havas Media Turkey, the advertiser being Rekit Bekinzer, Finnish.
Thank you. We'll look at product innovation.
A silver for the Green Look campaign, submitted by Wavemaker Hungary, the advertiser being Romani. And a bronze for the Vakif Bank Myriad project, submitted by Papillon Istanbul, the advertiser being Vakif Bank.
Brilliant. Looking at search advertising.
We have only a gold. The campaign is Search Against Violence. It's submitted by Proof, and the advertiser is Avon, Bulgaria. In social media, we have 1 gold. The campaign is Fruits of Diplomacy. It's submitted by Proof, and the advertiser is Kasaba. A silver, the campaign is Pit Story, submitted by Publicis Emil Turkey. The advertiser is Mercedes-Benz Turkey. And a bronze for the Rexona Fantastic Teens IGTV series campaign, submitted by Initiative. The advertiser is Rexona Unilever.
Fantastic. And then we're going to look at video advertising.
We have a silver. The campaign is Furiously Fast Premier League with Canal Plus. It's submitted by Havas Media Poland, and the advertiser is Canal Plus.
I'm going to look at virtual and augmented reality.
We have 2 bronzes. The first one goes for the Puma Alonso's virtual music tour on GTA campaign, submitted by Havas Sports and Entertainment Paris. The advertiser is Puma. And a bronze also for the Zoetis Sidectin Triclamox VR, submitted by Format C. The advertiser is Zoetis.
And then we're delighted to announce our new category this year, which was the best use of CTV.
And we have a bronze. The campaign is Vakif Bank Myriad Project, submitted by Papillon Istanbul, and the advertiser is Vakif Bank.
Brilliant. And then just to close the Mix Awards, every year we ask our jury if they would like to consider any of the entrants to win the Grand Prix. So I'm going to pass over to you, Constantine, to announce the winner of the Grand Prix, which was voted unanimously by all of the jury and actually received the highest scores from all of the campaigns submitted this year.
Drum roll. And the Grand Prix goes to the L'Enfant Bleu, the Fortnite Undercover Avatar campaign, submitted by Havas Sports and Entertainment, and the advertiser is L'Enfant Bleu. It's the highest scoring campaign in 2021, unanimously agreed, as Helen said, as the Grand Prix winner. Huge congratulations.
Thank you so much. So all of those we'll be placing up onto the website with all of the campaign videos. So we encourage you to all watch those. So now we will move on to the Research Award winners for 2021. And we will start with the first category, which is audience measurement.
There were no awards to campaigns in this category, as we see.
Yeah, they scored very high, but none of them made it to the final stages. Okay, so then we will look at best use of research budget.
There's a silver for Mimo Square, next-gen cross-media analytics, unraveling the true value of digital in-store retail advertising on brand and sales.
Fantastic.
The description is there. I'm sure that the slides will be up and people will be able to see the details.
Brilliant. And then we look at brand advertising effectiveness.
Again, a silver for Mimo Square, next-gen cross-media analytics, unraveling the true value of digital in-store retail advertising on brand and sales. Congratulations.
Brilliant. Now we're going to look at consumer attitudes and behavior.
We have a gold and a silver. The gold goes to Kantar for Kantar's COVID-19 barometer. And the silver goes to Analect Netherlands, up to 50% of Dutch young adults partially unreachable with digital ads due to ad blockers. Great projects both. Congratulations.
Congratulations. We're going to look at cross-media measurement.
Again, the gold goes to Mimo Square for next generation cross-media analytics, unraveling the true value of digital in-store retail advertising on brand and sales. And we have a bronze for Dentsu. This is how El Giganten changed retail with the use of Dentsu's ecosystem modeling.
Thanks, Constantine. Looking at data effectiveness category.
We only have a silver here. It's for Analect Nordics. Analect's CRM platform is developed on top of McDonald's sales system, CRM platform, and data from public databases to enrich prediction scores. So congratulations.
Now we move on to digital advertising and marketing industry insights.
We have a gold and a bronze. The gold goes to PwC ISBA AOP for PwC Programmatic Supply Chain Transparency Study. We heard a lot about this one, so well merited, the gold. And the bronze goes to TEADS for the effect of creative optimizations on attention and brand metrics.
Now we're going to look at digital advertising formats.
There's a bronze here for TEADS, creating engaging mobile advertising with or without sound.
Okay, and then one of our last categories is the research innovation.
Here we have a gold, a silver, and a bronze. The gold goes to the PwC ISBA AOP Programmatic Supply Chain Transparency Study. The silver to Verizon Media for Fabric of Reality, measuring the impact of VR. And the bronze to Mimo Square, next generation cross-media analytics, unraveling the true value of digital in-store retail advertising on brand and sales.
Thank you, Constantine. And now we have our final award, which is the Digital Researcher of the Year, which we're delighted to have so many entrants for.
Yes, and it goes to a distinguished industry professional. Those that attended Interact in the past will certainly know her quite well. To our colleague Anita Karas, the Insights Director for Verizon Media EMEA. So congratulations, Anita.
And then finally, as with the Mix Awards, we asked the research jury if there was a campaign that they would like to vote on for the Grand Prix. So I'll hand over to you to announce the winner for this.
So the Grand Prix goes with their 2 goals, the PwC ISPA AOP Programmatic Supply Chain Transparency Study. I am not very surprised, though there were several fantastic entries. So congratulations for winning the Grand Prix. And I think, Helen, at this point, we're wrapping up. And,
we are, yes.
As we're over time, I will very briefly remind you that we start tomorrow for our Policy and Data Protection Day at 2 o'clock CET. But for the moment, warmest thanks to our speaker and panelists, to our sponsors, OneTrust, Double Verify, and Relevant Yield, and our supporting sponsors, Google and Magnite. Warmest thanks to Helen Massard and Lauren Wakefield from the team at IAB Europe. And thank you to all of you who joined us today. We all look forward to having you with us tomorrow. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.